Chapter 37. This was the effect that Long Houchen wanted. With a tap of his left foot, he leapt into the air. Amidst a series of metallic clangs, the fire sword completed its lightning thrust, and in the next instant, the glorious sun flashed once more. It fiercely slammed into the heavy shield, and his leaping body also borrowed this attack to rise above Wang Yuanyuan's head. Not good. Wang Yuanyuan also reacted at this time. Her heavy shield was most suitable for medium to short-range attacks, but it was not suitable for close combat. She was not good at defense, so when Long Houchen closed in like this, his rhythm was clearly broken. Long Houchen's glorious sun slash was heavy and powerful, forcing her to take another step back. At this time, Long Houchen's battle-killing revolving sword had already erupted. Wang Yuanyuan was able to stand out among the many warriors, so this was not the only skill. This girl's eyes flashed with a hint of wildness. At this time, she did not rely on the advantage of her giant shield to passively defend. She suddenly raised the shield, and instead of holding it with one hand, she used the tip of her feet to point her feet on the ground, and her whole body was like a giant spinning top. An intense silver light also instantly dyed the giant shield in her hands. Rotating shield, splitting strike. The silver light rippled, and Long Houchen was shocked to find that when his battle-killing revolving sword landed on the rapidly rotating giant shield that was emitting intense silver light, his attacks actually kept slipping away. Not only was he unable to display the full power of the battle-killing revolving sword, he was also unable to completely borrow strength. This caused the power of his secret skill to be greatly reduced. But the giant shield was as solid as a boulder, not moving in the slightest, nor did it show any signs of being damaged. A trace of envy appeared in Long Houchen's heart. Although the shield was a little big, the quality was really good. The scene in front of him was absolutely gorgeous. Long Houchen and Wang Yuanyuan, one spinning horizontally in the air, the other spinning vertically on the ground to resist. Gold and silver spiritual energy wildly exploded, colliding with each other. The powerful explosive force forced the referee to move closer to them. He was ready to intervene at any moment to prevent either of them from getting hurt. As Long Houchen spun, layers of halos erupted from his body. While using the battle-killing spiral sword, he was able to continuously release the Conviction Halo and Trusty Halo, increasing his attack power. Just how strong was his mental strength to do that? Wang Yuanyuan seemed to have completely blocked Long Houchen's attack. Her shield was not damaged in the slightest. However, the continuous pressure caused her spinning feet to gradually sink into the ground, like a spinning top gradually drilling into the ground. Wang Yuanyuan suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek. The rapidly rotating shield in her hand suddenly blasted out a huge silver beam of light over a meter in diameter. Long Houchen was caught off guard, and the battle-killing revolving sword clashed fiercely with it, sending him flying high into the air. The silver beam of light contained an extremely powerful tearing force. Fortunately, he had the support skill of Angel's Blessing. Coupled with the fact that he had released a spirit light barrier in time, he was not truly injured. Poof! When his feet hit the ground, Long Houchen took 4 or 5 steps back before he could barely stabilize himself. On the other side, Wang Yuanyuan had just jumped out of the hole she had dug. Sky Splitter, a powerful spatial attribute warrior's secret technique. It had an instant and tyrannical explosive force. However, Wang Yuanyuan was in an extremely passive situation and was unable to fully display the power of this attack. Even so, she relied on this attack and Sky Splitter to break Long Houchen's battle-killing spiral sword. However, at this moment, Wang Yuanyuan's situation did not look too good. Her beautiful face, full of heroic spirit, was clearly somewhat pale. Her small chest that had just developed constantly heaved up and down as she panted. Using 2 of her most powerful skills consecutively consumed a lot of her spiritual power. In terms of consumption, Long Houchen, who had the constitution of the Child of Light, was much better than her. This was clear from the fact that he still maintained Angel's Blessing. "You're the Punishment Knight?" Wang Yuan looked at Long Haochen with a puzzled expression. Long Haochen shook his head slightly. I know a bit of both protection and punishment skills. Wang Yuan panted slightly. It seems that I really am not your match in a normal fight. However, I won't admit defeat just like this. I'm going to use my full strength. You should also summon your mount. With your trash equipment, you can't compete with my divine soul shield. She knew her own strength. Although it seemed that she was not at a disadvantage, the series of collisions just now had consumed more than half of her spiritual energy. On the other hand, Long Haochen did not seem to have consumed much of his spiritual energy. The most overbearing aspect of his battle-killing spiral sword was that it borrowed strength to attack, which consumed very little spiritual energy. On the other hand, her two main offensive skills consumed a lot of spiritual energy. As she spoke, she flipped her left hand, and suddenly a large gem appeared in her hand. The intense silver light of her spatial spiritual energy dyed the hand, holding the gem a brilliant silver. Without hesitation, she directly inserted the gem into the first of the 9 holes on the shield. Then, she quickly took out 2 more gems and inserted them into the second and third holes on the shield. These gems all looked the same. Their entire bodies were pale gold, but it was not the gold of the light attribute. Instead, it was a pure gold with a red halo. When the first gem was inserted, the huge shield began to emit a boundless majesty and arrogance. A pure gold halo spread out. The majesty was high and mighty, like a ruler of a generation. Moreover, its aura was so dense, containing the glory of countless years of history. On the rostrum in the distance, the 6 experts from the 6 great temples who were in charge of supervising the competition stood up at almost the same time. Their eyes were filled with shock. Long Haochen definitely did not know what it was, but how could they not know? This aura clearly belonged to the powerful weapons and equipment from the glorious era from 6,000 to 13,000 years ago. Judging from the aura, the current aura emitted by the shield had already reached the peak of glorious great equipment. It was only a step away from legendary great equipment. At this moment, Wang Yuan had only embedded 3 gems on it. What if she had all 9 gems? Would this huge shield surpass legendary grade and reach the level of epic grade equipment? With the embedding of the 3 gems, a strange face gradually appeared on the huge shield. The face was very ferocious. Under the cover of the pure gold halo, it was composed of 5 colors: red, yellow, white, blue, and gray. The powerful pressure was emitted from the face. Long Haochen, who was in front of it, felt that the aura was like a tangible object that kept attacking his body. Wang Yuan held the huge shield and slowly raised it. Immediately, the pure gold light also dyed her body. Wang Yuan did not have any armor on her. As soon as she was dyed by the pure gold light, both her clothes and her skin rippled with a strange luster. An almost barbaric aura erupted from her body. Long Haochen's perception was far beyond that of ordinary people. He could clearly feel that the current Wang Yuan contained an extremely strong, explosive spiritual power. It was as if she could launch a fatal attack at any time. Purple light flashed on his forehead. 9 purple light patterns coiled and shone. There was no need for an incantation. Long Haochen pointed forward with his right hand. The purple light patterns on his forehead expanded. With a flash of light, Hao Yue appeared in front of him out of thin air. Seeing the 3 Hao Yue, Wang Yuan's eyes immediately lit up. She knew that this was Long Haochen in his full state. And at this moment, she was also in her strongest state. It was not that she did not want to embed a few more gems on it, but because she only had 3 of these ancestral gems. I am a descendant of the mighty miracle god. This mighty miracle god shield is a bloodline weapon passed down by my ancestor since the glorious era. Although I can't use it to its full strength now, my mighty miracle god shield is infinitely close to legendary grade equipment. Be careful. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Yuan's right foot stomped heavily on the ground. With a loud bang, the entire training field shook violently. Her entire body was like a ball of pure gold flames, flying straight towards Long Haochen. The so-called bloodline weapon referred to a special weapon that only the direct bloodline relatives of the first person to possess this weapon could inherit. No matter how strong or weak this kind of weapon was, it did not have much value on the market. After all, no matter how good an item was, if it could not be used, it could only be a decoration. It could be clearly seen at the ground that Wang Yuanyuan's foot had just stomped on had a diameter of 5 feet and a depth of more than a meter. It could be seen how much strength she had used to stomp on the ground. Facing the powerful pressure from the mighty miracle god shield, Hao Yue acted as if it did not feel anything. It raised its 3 heads and let out a roar at the same time. Long Haochen and Hao Yue were telepathically connected. His figure flashed, and he landed on Hao Yue's back. Under the effect of the angel's blessing, Hao Yue's body was also covered with a faint layer of golden light. With a wave of the fire sword in his right hand, a sword of light slashed towards Wang Yuanyuan. Hao Yue's 4-meter-long body was extremely nimble. Little Greenie spat out a green stream of air and used the levitation technique to reduce its weight. It made a horizontal jumping motion. Carrying Long Haochen, it moved 2 feet to the side. The mighty miracle god shield in Wang Yuanyuan's hands came out horizontally. When it collided with the sword of light, a strange scene appeared. The sword of light shattered in an instant, turning into specks of golden light that disappeared into the air. At the moment of contact, Long Haochen could clearly feel that the mighty miracle god shield was violently shaking at an astonishing speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. The sword of light had been directly shattered by it. Wang Yuanyuan's toes touched the ground, and it chased after Hao Yue's heavy shield and slashed down. Hao Yue's 3 heads started chanting when its body moved horizontally. Seeing that Wang Yuanyuan's attack was about to reach, 3 layers of light simultaneously spread out from Hao Yue's body. It was actually 3 elemental shields. The green was wind, the red was fire, and the gold was light. The 3 elemental shields were also imbued with the light attribute of the angel's blessing. Long Haochen's 2 swords blocked. His body instantly froze, and he used divine defense to block. Although Wang Yuanyuan's speed was fast, Hao Yue was not unable to dodge. However, Long Haochen still chose to meet force with force. He wanted to test the extent of the mighty miracle god shield's attack power. Boom, boom, dang. 4 consecutive explosions shook the entire audience. The 3 elemental shields were actually able to stop the mighty miracle god shield's sharpness for 3 seconds before shattering one after another. In the end, it still fiercely collided with the 2 swords that Long Haochen had crossed above his head. Long Haochen's entire body shook. A layer of golden light also lit up on his body. It was light's vengeance. Hao, who was below him, took a few steps back, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. The fine iron heavy sword was completely shattered. Although the fire sword was not broken, it was bent in the middle. From the looks of it, it was not very useful anymore. Moreover, at this time, Long Haochen's arms were already sore and numb. The blood in his body was in turmoil, and he was almost injured. It could be said that he and Hao Yue's combined strength could barely block this attack. Too strong. This strength was probably at least a few thousand gene of power. In this collision, Long Haochen had undoubtedly suffered a huge loss. However, this loss was not for nothing. Through this direct collision, he had already gained some understanding of the mighty miracle god shield in Wang Yuanyuan's hands. First of all, that rapid vibration should be a skill that came with the mighty miracle god shield. Without this skill, it would not be so easy to break through the 3 elemental shields. Secondly, the shield's greatest power lay in its strength. It seemed to be able to directly increase Wang Yuanyuan's external spiritual power, and its body was extremely heavy. This was why it could produce such power. However, it seemed that it was not easy for Wang Yuanyuan to control this shield. At the moment of the collision, her face clearly flushed red. Moreover, after the shield repelled Long Haochen, her huge shield had directly smashed into the ground. More than half of the shield was submerged in the ground. She was currently using all her strength to pull it out, and it was far from the ease she had before. Obviously, with her cultivation, It was not easy for her to control this shield. At this time, the knight's advantage was displayed. Indeed, Long Hao-Chen's arms were numb from the vibration, and his weapon was damaged. However, Hao Yue was not directly injured. Moreover, when Long Hao-Chen used Divine Block to block the mighty miracle god shield, Hao Yue's body straightened, helping Long Hao-Chen to dissolve a part of the power. After taking a few steps back, Hao Yue took advantage of the opportunity when Wang Yuan was pulling out the shield from the ground and rushed to Wang Yuan's side. The thick tail swept towards Wang Yuan's legs, and at the same time, a large number of fireballs and wind blades crazily bombarded Wang Yuan, especially the hands that were holding the shield. Little Light chanted an incantation, and the spirit replenishing technique, Brilliant World, was released again, replenishing Long Hao-Chen's consumption. Wang Yuan's consumption was indeed not small. This was not the first time she used the mighty miracle god shield, but she had forgotten that when she used the mighty miracle god shield in the past, her internal spiritual energy was always very abundant. But the series of collisions with Long Hao-Chen had consumed a lot of her energy. And just now, when she used the mighty miracle god shield to attack with all her strength, she discovered that she could not completely control the mighty miracle god shield without the support of her internal spiritual energy. And Hao Yue's follow-up attacks were really too fast. So much so that she was thrown into confusion. Pulling the mighty miracle god shield horizontally, Wang Yuan tried to hide behind the shield. With the power of the mighty miracle god shield, these ordinary magic spells could not withstand it. And she really did it. A large number of Little Fire and Little Green's magic spells were all annihilated under the high-frequency vibration of the mighty miracle god shield. However, Hao Yue was extremely cunning. The magic it instantly released was only to confuse Wang Yuan, while the big tail below wrapped around one of Wang Yuan's legs in time, and suddenly pulled back. Although Wang Yuan's strength was greatly increased by the mighty miracle god shield's amplification, Hao Yue's strength was also not small, not to mention that it was pulling with all its strength and panicking. This time, the effect was clearly shown. Wang Yuan's body was extremely flexible. With this pull, her whole body immediately fell down, making a very flexible split movement. She still wanted to pull the shield over to chop Hao Yue's tail. However, Long Hao-Chen did not give her this opportunity. At the same time as Hao Yue launched, Long Hao-Chen received the support of Little Light's dazzling heaven and earth skill. At the same time, his spiritual power was rapidly restored, and the numbness in his arms was also alleviated. Those magic spells released by Little Fire and Little Green were not only to conceal their tail attacks, but also to conceal Long Hao-Chen's rising figure. Puff! Long Hao-Chen, who flashed behind Wang Yuan, cut Wang Yuan's neck with a palm knife. Wang Yuan only felt her vision go black, and then she fainted. Her mighty miracle god shield naturally could not be pulled over. Long Hao-Chen supported the fainted Wang Yuan and looked at the giant shield next to him with lingering fear. He knew that if Wang Yuan's control over the shield was just a little stronger, he would have been the one to lose. He could not let Hao Yue fight to the death with this shield. However, an inanimate object was, in the end, an inanimate object. Although the mighty miracle god shield's power was close to that of a legendary equipment, it still needed someone to control it. And Hao Yue's help to Long Hao-Chen was much greater. Compared to an equality contract, the advantages of a blood contract were becoming more and more obvious. The spiritual connection between them was much closer. Even if it was just a thought, they could feel each other, and their cooperation in battle was also more tacit. Although he won against Wang Yuan, Long Hao-Chen's expression was not very good. In this competition, all his equipment had been destroyed. Not a single one was left. The high-intensity competition and the terror of the mighty miracle god shield just now told Long Hao-Chen the role of powerful equipment in battle. But he had no money. How could he buy equipment? After entering the elimination round, without any suitable equipment, how could he face the other strong people in the other groups? Hao Yue had evolved into a three-headed beast, and Long Hao-Chen himself had broken through to the fifth order. Right now, he was very confident that he could fight for the top 3 in this competition. Long Haochen wins. Long Haochen shone a holy barrier on Wang Yuanyuan's body. He did not use too much force, and after a few breaths, Wang Yuanyuan had already woken up from unconsciousness. She leapt up, looked at Long Haochen with an unconvinced expression, and snorted, saying, "If I had used the mighty miracle god shield from the start, you might not have been my opponent." As she said that, she removed the 3 gems from the shield. Long Haochen nodded seriously, saying, "You're right. However, the outcome of this battle is not yet known. From the looks of it, you don't seem to have full control over this equipment. It also consumes a lot of your energy. As long as I can persevere for a period of time, it will be very difficult for you to win." Wang Yuanyuan knew that he was speaking the truth and nodded to him, saying, "You're not bad. I will definitely enter the finals with you." As she said that, this valiant lady carried her giant shield and walked towards the resting area, looking directly at a certain mage who was resting. Huang Yi's expression was a little ugly at this moment. His last opponent was Wang Yuanyuan, and whoever won would advance as second place, although third place also had a chance of advancing. Who wouldn't want to control their own fate in their own hands? He had also seen Wang Yuanyuan's valiant performance just now. Huang Yi thought indignantly, "Can you not be so fierce?" Even a Radiance-grade equipment appeared, and the most powerful kind at that. "Can I handle it?" The power of that giant shield was enough to offset his spiritual stove advantage. After all, his earth elemental spirit had never evolved. After this battle, Long Haochen had officially advanced to the next round. Moreover, he had advanced to the next round as the first in his group and was the first to enter the top 16. After teleporting Haoyue back to the hotel room, Long Haochen walked out of the trial ground sullenly. What should I do without a weapon? However, the depression in his heart soon disappeared. "Kai, you're early again today." Long Haochen greeted her with a smile. Whenever he saw her, he would forget all his unhappiness. Although Kai still wore a veil after that time and did not let him see her face again, Long Haochen never asked to see it again. He walked a few steps forward and came to Kai's side. Long Haochen naturally held her little hand. Hearing his voice, the lines on Kai's eyebrows softened, and she asked softly, "How was today's match?" Long Haochen chuckled and said, "It's all right. Today's opponent was quite strong. It was a female warrior. Her shield was very powerful. She used the shield as an attack weapon and could also install gems to enhance its power. She said that she was a descendant of the mighty spirit god." Long Haochen had learned a lot from the battle just now. He excitedly recounted the process of his battle with Wang Yuanyuan. However, he did not mention the damage to his weapon. It was not because of anything else, but because he did not want Kai to worry about him. "It's good that you won. In that case, you're already first in your group." Kai smiled. Long Haochen nodded and said, "That's right. I just don't know what other strong opponents I will encounter in the elimination round. By the way, we've known each other for so long. Apart from sending you back, we haven't done anything else. How about—" Speaking till here, he paused for a moment and stopped holding Kai's hand. He moved slightly closer to look at the expression on Kai's face. If Kai was in a hurry to go home, he did not intend to invite her to dinner. However, Kai misunderstood. With a whoosh, her face that was not covered by the veil turned red, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. As an assassin, she had never felt as panicked as she was at this moment. Although they were both young, girls were always more mature than boys when it came to matters between men and women. What does he want to do? Does he want to look at my face? Or does he want to hug me? Or Kai's heart was already in a mess. Her little hand that was held by Long Haochen suddenly became sweaty. Long Haochen saw the sudden change in her expression and was also shocked. He hurriedly stretched out his hand to touch her forehead. Kai could not see it. Under the situation where her mind was in a mess, her perception of the outside world had also become a lot blurrier. Just as Long Haochen's palm touched her forehead, she subconsciously dodged backwards and cried out in alarm. Don't. After all, she was not ready. Not far behind her, there was a small stone step. She retreated in panic and immediately tripped her feet, causing her whole body to fall backwards. Long Haochen was shocked. Although he did not understand what happened to Kai, he still subconsciously took a step forward and hugged her slender waist, supporting her delicate body. Be careful. At this moment, Kai was so embarrassed that even her neck was red. She could clearly feel the heat from Long Haochen's palm that was hugging her waist, as well as his aura that instantly approached her. As an assassin, especially since she had been practicing since she was a child, her body was extremely sensitive because only in this way could she sense any subtle danger. But at this moment, her body slightly softened and her legs almost lost their balance. One hand grabbed the lapel of Long Haochen's clothes, and her mind was a little blank. At this moment, Long Haochen was also a little dazed. At this time, the weather was not cold, and everyone was not wearing much clothes. When he hugged Kai-Er's slender and soft waist, he only felt that his palm was as smooth as cream and as warm as beautiful jade. Especially when he felt that slender waist that seemed to be about to break and the attractive curve between the suddenly raised, perky buttocks. His handsome face also blushed with shame. Just a few seconds, but to them, it was as long as a few centuries. It was still Kai, or who reacted first. She straightened her back and hurriedly stood up, holding the green bamboo stick in her hand to block Long Haochen. She angrily said, "You Long Haochen said in a daze, are you okay?" I just wanted to invite you to dinner. What's wrong with you? Are you sick? Do you have a fever? Your face is so red. This time, it was Kai-Er's turn to be dazed. So he was just... I actually thought wrongly. Not only did the blush on her face not fade, but it also became a little more intense. Kai lightly tapped Long Haochen with the green bamboo stick and said in a low voice, "Scoundrel, I'll go back first. Who wants to eat with you?" With that, she tapped the ground with the green bamboo stick, and Long Haochen only saw her figure flash, and in a few flashes, she disappeared without a trace. What a fast movement technique. An assassin's speed is really enviable. But what's wrong with Kai-Er? Why did she call me scoundrel? Long Haochen stood there for a moment, and then returned to the hotel with some confusion. His perception was sharp, and he could feel that Kai wasn't really angry with him. But he didn't understand why she left as if she was running away. But the feeling of catching her just now was really good. Hugging her waist was really very comfortable. Today, he was a little reluctant to wash his hands. Long Haochen returned to the hotel, and before he entered the room, he heard Yihua's voice from the room next door. "Long Haochen, come here. How did teacher know that I'm back?" Long Haochen's heart moved, and he hurriedly went to Yihua's room and pushed the door open. In Yihua's room, he wasn't the only person. Other than him, there were two other people. An old man with white hair and beard sat opposite him, and behind the old man stood a young man. This young man recognized him. Wasn't he Han Yu who recognized me as his master that day? Although Yihua was sitting there, he seemed very respectful, and only half of his but was sitting on the chair. This was the first time that Long Haochen saw such a teacher. With his understanding of teacher, this was definitely the expression of his emotions from the bottom of his heart. Who is this old man? Is he Han Yu's elder? Because he wanted to be my retainer knight that day. He came to get back at me? Long Haochen's heart trembled, but he didn't say anything, and silently walked to the back of Yihua and stood still. Han Yu naturally saw him as well, but the current expression on Han Yu's face was very calm, and there wasn't the slightest bit of arrogance from before. The old man sitting opposite Yihua, wasn't he the Knight Alliance's holy knight Chong Han Q? When he saw Long Haochen, his eyes immediately lit up, and he said with a smile, "Yihua, you really raised a good disciple. Originally, I wanted you to pass my message to him, but since he came back so early, there's no need for that. Haochen, how was today's competition?" Hearing Yihua's voice, Long Haochen's eyes immediately widened. His memory was as good as his perception. Although this voice was very gentle, he immediately recognized the owner of this voice that had once left a deep impression on him. You're that holy knight Chong who was on the rostrum during the preliminaries?" Long Haochen said involuntarily. Han Q smiled and nodded, and said, "That's right. It's rare for you to remember my voice." Yihua glanced at Long Haochen and said, You still haven't answered Lord Holy Knight Chang's question. Long Haochen hurriedly said respectfully, I won today's competition by luck. By luck? Han Q looked at him with a bit of surprise and said, Tell me, who else in your group could make you use the word by luck? Long Haochen nodded, and immediately he gave a simple account of the battle between him and Wang Yuanyuan, with emphasis on describing Wang Yuanyuan's divine shield. Epic equipment. Han Q's expression changed, and he frowned slightly. I've heard of the mighty miracle god's inheritance. Their bloodline actually has a bloodline that has been passed down. This is a good thing for us humans. From the looks of it, this girl would become a target for the warrior temple to nurture in the near future. I can confirm that the bloodline equipment passed down by the mighty miracle god's bloodline is at least epic grade. However, I don't remember the mighty miracle god of the glorious era having a shield. From the looks of it, that little girl's divine giant soul shield should be a broken weapon. However, even so, if she could complete the 9 sockets embedding, she would definitely reach the epic level. This method of using the resonance of a 9 sockets to form a spirit force field has been lost. This holy knight was definitely very knowledgeable, and his knowledge was far greater than Yihua's. Not bad, not bad. To be able to win against this kind of equipment, you've brought glory to our Knights Templars. Han Q nodded in satisfaction. Little Haochen, this time, I came here especially to look for you. I won't hide it from you. My name is Han Q, and Han Yu is my grandson. However, this brat's performance in the Monster Hunter's trials really disappointed me. That day, I told him to worship you as his master and become your retainer knight, and it wasn't a lie. Today, I brought him here, and I've also helped him settle the formalities for becoming a retainer knight. From now on, for 5 years, he can only be your retainer. His life, his everything is under your control. Little you. Little you. Han Yin signaled to his grandson. Han Yu hurriedly took a few steps forward, bowed slightly, and extended his left hand. Long Haochen suddenly saw a special mark on Han Yu's left palm. He didn't recognize this mark. Han Yin said, This is the retainer knight contract. It's tentatively set for 5 years. You need to drip a drop of blood in the center of the contract. After the contract is completed, he can't disobey any of your orders for 5 years. At the same time, you only need to use your mind to control his life and death. Looking at Han Q's serious expression, Long Haochen couldn't help but say, Lord Saint Knight, there's no need for that. I think Brother Han, you was just careless for a moment. Han Q slowly stood up and said in a deep voice, he wasn't just careless for a moment. This brat has some talent, but his character is seriously flawed. He's arrogant and willful, and he can't bear great responsibilities. But you are different. I see all the glory of a knight in you. Don't think that you've benefited from him becoming your retainer knight. In fact, he's gotten even more. By following you, not only can he join your monster hunters, but he can also learn a lot from you. These 5 years of tempering might really help him get on the right track and become an outstanding knight. This is also my goal. So, as his grandfather, I'm begging you to accept him as your retainer. While speaking, Han Q crossed his right fist in front of his chest and actually performed a standard knight salute to Long Haochen. Long Haochen was startled and hurriedly returned the salute. Lord Saint Knight, don't be like this. You're killing me, I promise. Yihua, who was standing at the side, didn't utter a single word from beginning to end. Han Xian had unabashedly stated the reason why she wanted Han Yu to become Long Haochen's retainer knight. She did it openly and straightforwardly, without any intention of concealing anything. Just this point alone was enough to make people admire her. What's more, having a rank 5 guardian knight by his side would greatly increase Long Haochen's safety. Fresh blood slowly dripped down and landed in the center of the retainer knight's contract rune. Even though Han Yu had already thought things through these few days, he still couldn't help but close his eyes at the moment when he was about to officially become someone else's retainer. When the blood dripped onto Han Yu's palm, it instantly turned into a layer of faint red light and disappeared. Immediately after, a red halo instantly spread out from the rune and spread to Han Yu's entire body. Han Yu shivered and subconsciously opened his eyes. Before he could even greet Long Houchin with the word master, a golden halo suddenly spread out. Suddenly, another ring of golden light rippled out from the rune. In an instant, Hanyu only felt that all 6 million pores on his body instantly opened up. From inside to outside, he felt a warmth and comfort that came completely from the source. It was as if his body had entered a hot spring, causing him to almost moan out loud. What's going on? Not to mention Yi Hua and Long Houchin. Even Han Q was startled. This kind of situation was something that even the experienced and knowledgeable Saint Knight had never seen before. Hanyu himself was also a little dumbfounded. However, this feeling of comfort was real. He could feel that there was already a faint connection between him and Long Houchin. Moreover, it was very intimate, just like a family member. Chapter 38. This is the Master Knight's talent suppression sharing over the Devil Follower Knight. It can't be. Han Q widened his eyes and looked at Long Houchin as if he was looking at Monster. The shock and disbelief in his eyes were not concealed at all. Taking a deep breath, Han Q turned his gaze to his grandson. His expression also became solemn, and his right hand pointed at Han Yu through the air. In an instant, Long Houchin saw that Han Q's finger had turned into a sparkling and translucent golden color. Glorious body. This was the 7th level skill of the night. Han Q's palm trembled, and his 5 fingers moved rhythmically. Streaks of light that were filled with mysterious trajectories rippled out from his palm. In an instant, they turned into a complicated pattern of light, directly imprinting on Han Yu's chest. Immediately, Han Yu's body trembled, and a golden light spurted out from his chest. It slowly rose into the air and became a golden pillar of light. The pillar of light rose slowly. Han Q's gaze was fixed on the speed at which the pillar of light was rising, and the expression on his face became more and more agitated. Yi Hua and Long Houchin were somewhat puzzled. They did not recognize the ability that Han Q had just used, and they did not understand what exactly had happened. After a moment, the golden pillar of light finally stopped rising. Meanwhile, Han Yu's hands were unconsciously clenched into fists at this moment. It's true. It's actually really like this. 80. Looking back, Han Q's gaze when he looked at Long Houchin had become extremely strange. He sized him up from head to toe, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Long Houchin felt somewhat uncomfortable under his gaze, and he could not help but ask, "Lord Holy Knight, what happened?" Han Q took a deep breath and waved his right hand. A layer of golden light screen had already enveloped everything in the room, including the area beneath their feet. What he said next shocked Yi Hua and Long Houchin. Little Houchin, you really shock me to the extreme. Innate internal spiritual energy, 97, Son of Light. I didn't expect that after 6,000 years of the Dark Age, the Knights Templars would finally have a Scion of Light. Ha 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 ha. Long Houchin and Yi Hua both stared at him in bewilderment. If it was someone else who said this, perhaps this pair of master and disciple would have already prepared a fight. But in front of them was the Holy Knight Captain of the Knights Templars. That was a super expert who could easily destroy them with a wave of his hand. Moreover, they didn't think that Han Q would harm them. "Ow, how did you know?" Long Houchin asked blankly. Since the other party had already said the specific number, there was no point in hiding it anymore. So, he might as well ask the question in his heart. Han Q couldn't calm down at all. The fire of excitement burned in his eyes. It's because you revealed a flaw in the Retainer Knight contract. The Retainer Knight and the Master Knight have a close relationship. To sign the contract, the bloodline of both parties needs to be connected. That's why a drop of your blood is needed. And when the Retainer Knight contract is completed, if the Master Knight's talent far surpasses the Retainer Knight's, then the Retainer Knight's talent will increase along with the Master Knight's talent. When the contract ends, this talent increase will disappear. The so-called far surpasses the Retainer Knight's talent has a certain amount, which is what I said just now. And this amount is the innate internal spiritual energy difference of more than 30. In other words, if the Master Knight's innate internal spiritual energy is 30% higher than the Retainer Knight's, the retainer knight's talent will increase accordingly. The extent of this increase will reduce the gap between the two's innate internal spiritual energy by half. Xiaoyu's innate internal spiritual energy is 63, which is already considered pretty good. But now, his innate internal spiritual energy is as high as 80. In other words, his innate internal spiritual energy has increased by no less than 17 points. If 17 is doubled, then it's 34 points. With the addition of 63 points, I can naturally calculate your innate internal spiritual energy. 97. This is 97 points of innate internal spiritual energy. I really didn't expect that in my lifetime I would actually be able to see a powerhouse with the constitution of the Son of Light. Long Haochen was dumbfounded. Yihua was also dumbfounded, and Hanyu was giggling like a fool. Yihua muttered, Why have I never heard that a retainer knight can have such a benefit? Han Q said, There aren't many retainer knights in the first place. Moreover, there are also several kinds of retainer knight contracts. Only this rune that I researched from the ancient Elven language can produce this kind of innate spiritual energy sharing. Not to mention that you haven't heard of it. Even among the temple's knight rank, only a few people know about it. Moreover, it's useless for the vast majority of people, so there's naturally no need for our temple to publicize it. Yihua's body suddenly trembled uncontrollably. With a trembling voice, he asked, Elder Saint Knight, how many retainers can this Master Knight have? Han Q replied without any hesitation, 2. Because this contract will produce a certain amount of spiritual connection. If there are too many retainers, it will affect the Master Knight's own spiritual power, which will be disadvantageous. Therefore, we generally believe that it's more suitable for the Master Knight to have at most 2 retainers. With a plop sound, Long Haochen knelt on one knee on the ground. Elder Saint Knight, I beg you, please also plant a contract rune on Teacher. Teacher is the real genius. Hearing what he said, Han Q was a bit stunned. Yihua looked at Long Haochen with an excited expression. No, Long Haochen, this will make it so that you will no longer be able to have a retainer knight. Long Haochen shook his head blankly. Teacher, becoming strong is the most important thing. It's enough for me to have Brother Han's assistance. As long as I can help you in terms of talent, this disciple will not hesitate to help you. Wait, why don't I understand what you mean? Han Q looked at the master and disciple in confusion. Yihua sighed, then lowered his head and said, Elder Saint Knight, this subordinate's innate internal spiritual power is only 8 points. What? Han Q cried out in surprise. His voice was so loud that it shook Long Haochen's and disciples' ears, causing them to buzz. Fortunately, he had set up the holy light inner spiritual power to block the sound, so he wasn't afraid that the sound would spread. This time, Han Q was really shocked. It wasn't any less than when he found out that Long Haochen's innate internal spiritual power was as high as 97 points. What did 8 points of innate internal spiritual power mean? It meant that he should never be able to break through 2 ranks. But not only did he break through, he was also an Earth Knight. At this moment, Han Q finally understood why Long Haochen would say that Yihua was the real genius. Genius didn't only refer to talent. A person with only 8 points of innate internal spiritual power was able to cultivate to the level of an Earth Knight. How could the word genius be able to describe this kind of persistence, perseverance, and wisdom? Taking a deep breath, Han Q glared at Yihua. Why didn't you report this matter to the higher-ups earlier? Yihua smiled bitterly and said, Innate internal spiritual power of 8 points isn't anything glorious. It will only make people laugh at me. Laugh at my ass. Idiot. Have you ever thought about how many people among us humans have innate internal spiritual power that is lower than 10 points? That's the majority. If they can all cultivate to the 5th rank like you, what would it mean for us humans? Han Q almost roared out. At this moment, Yihua was shocked. In his entire life, he had been fighting against the heavens. The ridicule from the outside world had gradually formed his eccentric personality. To put it bluntly, he was self-centered and completely immersed in his own world. After listening to Han Q's words, he suddenly realized that his painstaking cultivation for the past few decades was not only helpful to himself. Although the cultivation methods that he had researched were not suitable for the little monster Longhouchen, they were suitable for the majority of people who didn't have enough talent. Han Q raised his hand, and a golden light lifted Longhouchen up from the ground. I agree to your request. Right now, I'm even more curious than you to see what kind of miracles can happen from you as a teacher. Yihua, give me your left hand. Yes. Yihua's current excitement was the same as when he accepted Longhouchen as his disciple. The talent that had troubled him for his entire life could finally be changed. 10 minutes later, a rune that was exactly the same as the one on Han Q's palm appeared on Yihua's palm. Yihua and Longhouchen didn't discuss anything about the Retainer Knight's contract at all. They were master and disciple, as close as father and son. Even if Yihua became Longhouchen's Retainer Knight, so what? Would Longhouchen ask him to do anything? The absolute trust between master and disciple allowed them to make a decision without any communication. Another drop of blood fell. Yihua's feeling was almost 10 times stronger than Han Q's. When the golden halo appeared on his body spasmed due to excessive comfort, and he almost fainted. The difference in spiritual power between him and Longhouchen was as high as 89 points. After obtaining the talent suppression sharing, his innate internal spiritual power increased from 8 points to 52 points. Although he still couldn't be considered a genius, for Yihua, this increase in talent was enough to change his future fate. Feeling his perception of the light element increased by tens of times, feeling the change in the spiritual power in his body due to the change in talent, Yihua couldn't help but cry. He hugged Longhouchen and actually burst into tears. For decades, he had endured endless ridicule, endured the pain of being expelled by his teacher, and endured everything. It was a completely unyielding spirit that supported him to walk forward step by step. At this moment, the biggest problem that had troubled him for decades, the biggest problem that he had been fighting against for decades, was finally solved. The emotions that he had suppressed in his heart suddenly burst out like a broken dam. Seeing Yihua burst into tears, Han Q stood at the side and didn't stop him. With his experience, how could he not see that Yihua had suppressed his emotions for many years? At this moment, letting him release them was the best choice. His heart was clear, and it would be of great benefit to his future training. Although he wasn't young anymore, his future achievements in terms of training were limitless. No matter how strong the Son of Light was, he was the only one who was strong. However, the role that Yihua could play could help all the 6 major temples. Yihua cried for a whole 15 minutes. He cried until his eyes were red, and his tears wet the clothes on Longhouchen's shoulders. With great difficulty, he gradually restrained his emotions. Turning around, he knelt in front of Han Q and kowtowed. "Say Knight Elder, thank you." Han Q smiled, shook his head, and said, "No need to thank me. If you don't mind, you don't need to return to Hao US City. Just follow me from now on. I am willing to pass on my many years of training experience to you." Yihua was smart, and he was a genius of his generation. He quickly kowtowed again. "Disciple greets master." Han Q chuckled and helped him up with both hands. "I am the one who took advantage of you. In the future, you will definitely become a dazzling new star of our Knights Templars. Your achievements will probably not be any lower than your precious disciple." Seeing that his teacher had acknowledged him as his master, Longhouchen also quickly stepped forward and said respectfully, "Disciple Longhouchen greets master." Han Q was very satisfied. He was originally a straightforward person, so he immediately laughed out loud without caring about his image. Han Yu, who was at the side, looked at the scene in front of him. The trace of haze that was left in his heart had already disappeared. Putting aside the fact that his Lord Knight was his grandfather's disciple, Longhouchen's talent suppression sharing had directly increased his talent to 80 points. This had already made him consider whether he should discuss with his grandfather and extend the time of this retainer night. It seemed that Yihua's innate internal spiritual power had increased by more than 40 points. so he had obtained the most benefits. But in fact, the benefits that Han Yu had obtained were even more than him. Originally, Han Yu's innate internal spiritual power was 63 points. Although he was already a genius, it was still somewhat difficult for him to become a Knight of the Seal in the future. In the records of Knights Templars, the innate internal spiritual power of the strong to become a Knight of the Seal almost all had an innate internal spiritual power of more than 70 points. If one didn't have this kind of talent, it would be possible to become a Knight of the Seal by several times. Innate internal spiritual power of 70 points was the Angel of Light Constitution. Innate internal spiritual power of 80 points was the Divine Protection Constitution. In other words, under Long Hao-Chen's talent suppression sharing, his talent had directly increased by 2 levels. As long as he didn't die, breaking through to the 9th rank was only a matter of time. How could Han Yu not be excited? So what if he became a retainer knight? With such a huge increase in talent, even if he had to become a retainer knight for 20 years, it would still be worth it. I really didn't expect that this trip would actually have such a great harvest. Ha! Han Q said very proudly. All right, let's get down to business. Long Hao-Chen, previously in the preliminary stage, you obtain a top 10 place. According to the rules, our temple is going to reward you with a weapon. I heard from your 3rd group, our Knights Templars' supervisor, that your weapon was seriously damaged. Since that's the case, you should go ahead and collect the prize that we, Knights Templars, have given you. The weapon that the temple will reward you with depends on your luck. Tomorrow morning, Han Yu will bring you to the temple's treasure room. He will tell you what to do. In any case, you have already secured the 1st place in the 3rd group, so you don't need to participate in tomorrow's competition. Your teacher has acknowledged me as his teacher, and you have also become my grand disciple. When I go back, I will also prepare a greeting gift for each of you. I will have someone send it to you tomorrow. How can I, Han Q's grand disciple, not even have a set of equipment? Xiaoyu, from now on, you are Long Hao-Chen's retainer. You should know what you should do. Han Yu hurriedly and respectfully said, Yes, Grandpa. I will definitely earnestly learn from Master, and I will not disappoint you again. After Han Q left, Yihua impatiently went back to his room to train. Long Hao-Chen brought Han Yu back to his room. Brother Han, how about this? From now on, you could directly call me by my name. I feel a little awkward if you always call me Master. Long Hao-Chen very sincerely said to Han Yu. Han Yu immediately shook his head resolutely and said, How can I do that? I am your retainer knight, so I naturally have to call you Master. He had already made up his mind to follow Long Hao-Chen from now on. Son of Light. Following him was too promising. Right now, Han Yu simply couldn't be more impressed with his grandfather. His grandfather's foresight was too powerful. Becoming the Son of Light's retainer was an honor, not a disgrace. Long Hao-Chen persuaded for a long time, but Han Yu refused to agree no matter what. Helplessly, he could only arrange a place for him to stay for the time being. The next morning, Han Yu brought Long Hao-Chen to the temple's treasure room. Before leaving, Long Hao-Chen asked Lin Xian to tell Kai Er that he might come back very late today, and asked Kai Er not to wait for him. The temple's treasure room was part of the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field. Just like the Great Trial Field, it was jointly managed by the 6th Great Temple. The treasure room was located behind the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field, and it looked inconspicuous. From the outside, it was just an ordinary hexagonal building, and it seemed to only occupy an area of a few hundred square meters. At most, it looked like a slightly more luxurious residence. In front of the door, there were 2 old men dressed in cloth clothes sitting on the chairs and chatting. They looked very leisurely. Greetings, seniors. Junior Han Yu, under the order of Holy Knight Han Q, brings our temple's Earth Knight Long Hao-Chen to choose the prize. Han Yu respectfully went forward and bowed. Long Hao-Chen didn't dare to be negligent, and he also bowed to the 2 old men. One of the 2 old men was fat, and the other was skinny. The fat old man was a little bald, and he had a big belly. His shirt was unbuttoned, and his chest was exposed. The skinny old man was like a bamboo pole, and he looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind. Yes, token, the skinny old man said faintly. Han Yu quickly walked over and handed over a token. The skinny old man nodded and said, Wait here. Long Houchin, follow me. Yes. Long Houchin agreed, and followed the skinny old man into the treasure room, while Hanyu stood at the door quietly. The skinny old man brought Long Houchin into the treasure room. As soon as he entered, Long Houchin carefully observed one of the most important places in the sacred city. The hall in the treasure room was very small, and it was only about 100 square meters. In the middle of the floor, there was a hexagonal star pattern that occupied the entire floor. The door behind him was closed, and 6 walls surrounded him. On each wall, there was a huge painting. The main characters of the painting were all people. 6 walls, 6 people. From the way they were dressed, they were professionists from the 6 great temples. The people in these 6 paintings all looked very young. Among them, the ones from the Temple of the Priests and the Soul Temple were all female. The skinny old man stopped in the middle of the hexagonal star pattern, turned around, looked at Long Houchin from top to bottom, then snorted and said, "So you're Long Houchin. I don't see anything good about you." Long Houchin was a bit surprised. "Senior, do you know me?" The skinny old man didn't hold back at all. "I don't," after saying this. He moved his feet slightly and stepped on the knight's wall in the hexagram. Long Houchin didn't feel any spirit energy fluctuation, but the wall where the knight was already lit up. The skinny old man raised his right hand, and Long Houchin faintly saw something similar to a badge in his hand, flashing towards the wall where the knight was. Immediately, the wall started to glow, and the knight on it seemed to come alive. "Knights Templars, time to pick someone up," the skinny old man shouted. Suddenly, he raised his foot and kicked Long Houchin's butt. His movement was so fast that Long Houchin didn't even have time to react. He only felt his whole body go numb and couldn't use any spirit energy at all. His whole body was sent flying towards the wall with the knight's mark. Long Houchin was so shocked that he almost cried out. Just when he thought that his whole body would be in excruciating pain, everything around him suddenly became illusory. His body actually disappeared into the wall, just like that. Looking at the knight's mark on the wall, the skinny old man snorted. "A 14-year-old Earth Knight, barely passable. I don't see anything particularly good about him. What a loss, a loss. Why is that girl so stubborn? Is she really going to let this little brat of the Knights Templars take advantage of her? I really want to pinch this brat to death." As he said so, he leisurely walked out again. The fat old man who was sitting opposite him chuckled. "How was it?" The skinny old man glared at him. "Not good. Not good enough for my Kai." The fat old man laughed and said, "Don't tell me that. You should tell that to old Yang." The skinny old man sat down again, not even looking at Hanyu. He snorted and said, "I'll get even with old Yang sooner or later. In this life, that old thing actually took advantage of me. In his old age, he still let his little brat take advantage of me." The fat old man laughed. "I have to say something fair. It's not like it's for old Yang's grandson. What does it have to do with old Yang?" The skinny old man's expression suddenly became strange. "Now that you mention this, I'm a little happy. Old Yang's grandson is not even as good as this one. A few days ago, that brat was almost crippled by my little girl. You didn't see the wonderful expression on old Yang's face when he came looking for me. After so many years, this is the first time I've seen him suffer. But this old man's mood didn't last long, and I heard that it's actually because of that brat. What's going on? My assassin temple seems to owe the Knights Templars." Hanyu stood at the side and pricked up his ears to listen. Vaguely, he had already heard some clues. Right at this moment, the skinny old man suddenly turned his head. "What are you listening to?" Scram. With a casual wave of his hand, Hanyu felt a strong force transmit through his body, and his entire body flew dozens of meters away, as if he was riding on a cloud. This time, he was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his back. It was just a casual wave of his hand. He was at the 5th step, yet he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Who exactly were these 2 old men? Their strength was probably about the same as Grandpa's, right? With their cultivation, why would they be guarding the door here? The skinny old man said disdainfully, "Weasels give birth to mice. One nest is worse than the other. Hankyu's grandson is even more useless." Fat old man curled his lips and said, "No matter how useless he is, the overall quality of the younger generation of Knights Templars is also the best in the Alliance. You can't deny this, can you? The skinny old man said proudly. Bullshit. All of them combined can't compare to my Kai. Fat old man chuckled. Little girls always have to get married. Moreover, that kid who just went in is also not bad. He seems to be about the same age as your Kyer. The skinny old man froze. Damn fatty, you want to fight, don't you? Fat old man leaned against the back of the chair and said, if you were really willing to find a place to duel with me, there's no reason not to. Forget about the sneak attack. The skinny old man snorted twice, but sat back in his chair and did not say a word. In his shock, Long Houchin's body sank into the wall. He only felt a strong suction force around him, continuously tearing at his body from all directions. And at this moment, he had already regained control of his own spiritual energy. He hurriedly activated his spiritual energy to protect his body. Right at this moment, a big hand reached out from somewhere and grabbed his shoulder. With a light pull, the illusory and dark world suddenly disappeared. His eyes lit up, and Long Houchin appeared in another place. This was a place filled with the fragrance of flowers and birds. In front of him seemed to be a valley, and there was a faint golden mist enveloping the entrance of the valley. There were trees, bushes, and flowers growing around. The fresh air blew against his face. The blue sky and white clouds. The slightly moist, fresh air moistened his skin, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. The entrance of the valley was 100 meters away from him. On one side of the steep rock wall, there were 4 big words, Mount Spirit Valley. This is the treasure vault of the Knights Templars? Long Houchin stared at everything in front of him, dumbstruck. With his knowledge, he could not understand everything that had happened here. Welcome, little friend. A deep voice appeared behind Long Houchin. He hurriedly turned around, and Long Houchin immediately saw it. Behind him stood an old man, as if he was the one who had pulled him over just now. And behind him, there was a strange door of light. This door of light was somewhat similar to the living spirit gate that Shunning had released back then, but the patterns around the door of light were much more complicated. There were also no animal carvings, but many ancient elves. Strange, isn't it? The old man was tall and slender. His silver hair was draped over his back, and he wore a simple white robe. In this beautiful environment, he gave off a feeling of floating in the air. His forehead was broad, and his forehead was full. Although his face was covered with the frost of time, his eyes were still bright and full of spirit. His body was of average height, but he didn't look too muscular. But standing there, he looked like a giant pillar that could support the sky. Greetings, Senior. Long Houchin hurriedly and respectfully bowed to him as a knight. The old man smiled and said, I am Yang Howen. You can call me Grandfather Yang. Long Houchin hurriedly bowed again. Greetings, Grandfather Yang. Yang Howen smiled and patted his shoulder. Are you curious about everything here? Actually, this place was not built by us Knights Templars. It was passed down from the glorious era. It was built by the ancient elves. Not only here, but the other 5 temples' treasure pavilions are also the same. Simply put, this is a parallel space created by the ancient elves using their control over the laws of heaven and earth to attach to our original space. Then, at the beginning of the Dark Age, it was accepted by us humans, and after some modifications, it became what it is today. Although Long Houchin didn't really understand, he had some impression of it. He recalled everything he saw on the Knight's Holy Mountain. If it was just now, Yang Houhen smiled. To be honest, if it wasn't for us humans obtaining some of the wealth left behind by the ancient elves during the Dark Age, I'm afraid our human race would no longer exist. Long Houchin's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't ask anything. This was obviously related to the secrets of the 6 temples. If this Grandfather Yang in front of him wanted to say something, he would definitely tell him. Go, there will be a reward in the valley, but there will also be a test waiting for you. Be prepared. After entering the valley, there will be a fork. Follow the fork on the leftmost side. You will get your opportunity. Thank you, Grandfather Yang. Long Houchin respectfully replied. He walked towards the direction of the Riding Spirit Valley. The distance of 100 meters was covered in the blink of an eye, and he stepped into the thick, pale, golden fog. After entering the fog, Long Houchin suddenly felt different. The air seemed to have suddenly become heavy, and a pressure as heavy as a mountain instantly came. This caused his originally light footsteps to become heavy. The liquid spiritual power in his body was stimulated and protected itself. The surface of Long Houchin's body was covered with a layer of golden halo. Since breaking through to the 5th rank, Long Houchin clearly felt that his cultivation speed had slowed down. Originally, he could increase his spiritual power by dozens of times a day. It had returned to single digits. After 10 days or so, his total inner spiritual power was only about 2,030 points. On the contrary, because of Hao Yue's evolution, his external spiritual power seemed to have increased by quite a bit. The battle with Wang Yuan made Long Houchin realize that external spiritual power was equally important. It was very obvious that Wang Yuan's external spiritual power should be far beyond that of ordinary people. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to so easily use the unembedded state of the divine giant soul shield. If it wasn't for Hao Yue, in a situation where he didn't have a comparable weapon, he really wouldn't have been her opponent. Right now, the circulation of the liquid spiritual power in his body was very different from when he was cultivating. In the past, when he was cultivating, his internal spiritual power revolved around the saint's spiritual stove. But now it had become the complete opposite. The golden liquid spiritual power formed a ring of spiritual power, like a moat, quietly revolving around the saint's spiritual stove. But the saint's spiritual stove was still slowly revolving. Along with Long Houchin's cultivation, the liquid spiritual power refined increased. It was always flung out from the saint's spiritual stove and integrated into the outer ring of liquid spiritual power. Long Houchin also knew that he couldn't be too hasty in his cultivation. The reason why he could increase dozens of spiritual power points every day when he was about to break through was because he ate the spirit gathering pill given by Lin Xin. The other reason was because he constantly stimulated his potential in battle. And after the breakthrough, the liquid spiritual power cultivation was much more complicated. During the month, his potential that was stimulated was also almost consumed. Steady and sure, gradually improving was the most correct choice. He was only 14 years old this year, so he had plenty of time. The goal that Long Houchin set for himself was to become a Radiance Knight before the age of 18 and become a Temple Knight before the age of 25. Advancing rashly was obviously the most undesirable. Yue had also emphasized this to him many times. Although the pressure inside the faint golden fog was extremely great, Long Houchin could rely on his powerful spiritual power to feel that the light elements here were much richer than the outside world. The fog wasn't made up of moist water vapor. Instead, it was moist light elements. In other words, the light elements here seemed to be in a liquid state. Unfortunately, this wasn't something that Long Houchin could absorb. These light elements didn't repel him. But when he tried to absorb them, the surrounding pressure suddenly increased, almost causing his protective spiritual power to collapse. Long Houchin was so scared that he hurriedly guarded his mind and released a holy light barrier. Only then did he avoid the collapse of his own defense. He didn't dare to make any strange movements and just carefully moved forward. Not long after, the scenery ahead suddenly became clear. The other directions were still blurry, but a path appeared on the left side. This path was only 3 meters wide, and on both sides were towering cliffs. The cliffs were as smooth as a mirror, and with Long Houchin's current cultivation, he obviously couldn't climb them. It should be here. Long Houchin observed for a bit. Then, he walked toward the path. After leaving the range of the golden fog, his body suddenly became light. As the pressure was reduced, Long Houchin felt the spiritual power in his body surge slightly. This path wasn't straight, but winding, so he could only see the cliffs, but couldn't figure out what was at the end. Following the path forward, he walked for about a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, there were more than 10 forks in front of him. Each fork in the road was flanked by precipitous cliffs. This can't be naturally formed, otherwise it would be too uncanny. Long Houchin looked at the forks in shock and thought to himself, What should I do? Grandfather Yang didn't tell me there were forks. What should I choose? Should I still choose the leftmost fork? Stopping, Long Houchin fell into deep thought. Although he wasn't old, he was calm and didn't blindly enter. He didn't know why. A sense of unease rose in his heart. Long Houchin carefully recalled what Yang Haohan said to him, not missing a single word. His strong memory played an important role at this time. Grandfather Yang said that I have to go through a test to get the reward. Could this be a test or a part of a test? While thinking, Long Houchin immediately sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Previously, when he passed through the fog of light, his spiritual power had been consumed to a certain extent, since he had to face a test. Then, maintaining his peak condition was obviously very important. In this Mount Spiritual Valley, the light element was denser than the outside world. Although the light element here was not as dense as in the fog just now, but it was still very abundant. Relying on the physique of the scion of light, Long Houchin recovered to his peak condition in a short while. At this time, suddenly, Long Houchin's mind moved slightly. He sensed an extremely pure light elemental aura fluctuating slightly. Long Houchin suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze instantly locked in a direction. Chapter 39. Although that extremely pure light wave only flashed for a moment, with a strong perception, he was able to detect it. He still remembered the direction in an instant. There were a total of 10 forks in front of him, and the direction he remembered was the third one from the left. Without further hesitation, Long Houchin stood up and strode towards the third fork in the road. Less than 100 meters into the fork, the feeling from before appeared again. That's right, it was this direction. Long Houchin thought to himself, a place with such a strong light elemental fluctuation should naturally be my destination. He continued forward for a while. When he turned a corner, suddenly, a strange door of light appeared in front of him. This door of light was different from the one he had teleported through. It was much smaller. It was about 2 meters tall. It was 1 meter wide and oval in shape. Inside the door of light, there was a faint golden halo, but the edges were aqua blue. Am I going to step into this door of light? Long Houchin stopped in his tracks. Standing in front of the door of light, he immediately felt that the extremely pure light elemental fluctuation had come from this door of light. But it was not continuous, but randomly appearing from time to time. As the son of light, Long Houchin was born with a great affinity for light elemental fluctuations. Not only the light elemental fluctuations towards him, but he was also the same towards light elemental fluctuations. As long as he felt the presence of light elemental fluctuations, he would subconsciously rule out dangerous situations. After hesitating for a moment, Long Houchin took a deep breath and stepped into the door of light. This time, he did not feel any discomfort, only a soft halo around him. It was just a sway. He felt his feet on the ground again. The next moment, everything became real again. This was a cave, surrounded by irregular rocks. He stepped into this place. Long Houchin only felt that he had returned to the real world, and the next moment, it became dreamy. 2 rays of light, one blue and one gold, suddenly lit up, illuminating the entire cave. The blue was like the vast sea, full of inclusiveness and the crystalline beauty of blue. The gold was like the morning sun, warm, bright, full of vitality, but not dazzling. It was exuberant vitality, a light that drove away the darkness. Long Houchin's eyes instantly blurred. These 2 pure colors were so beautiful that he was immersed in them, especially that golden color when he saw it. He felt as if he had returned to the moment when his father helped him complete the divine awakening. The liquid spiritual power in his body was also emitted on its own, causing his body to flicker. His entrance seemed to have startled the gold and blue lights that filled the entire cavern. The 2 lights paused at the same time, but the feeling they gave Long Houchin was completely different. The blue light was crystal and probing, while the golden light paused for a moment. He immediately felt a strong sense of intimacy. He suddenly pounced on Long Houchin. Long Houchin didn't do anything. He just stood there silently, as the golden light enveloped his face. When his body was enveloped by the golden light, he felt his entire body become warm, and the spiritual power in his body suddenly increased in speed. It was an indescribable restraint. Although he couldn't see his surroundings clearly, only the golden light in front of him, the increasingly strong sense of intimacy filled Long Hao-chen's heart with satisfaction. He felt the truth of light, the endless pure light, and his entire body was immersed. Vaguely, Long Hao-chen's body became gradually transparent under the cover of the golden light. He let the golden light pass through his body, circling around him. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely cry out in shock. The body of light was a powerful symbolic ability of the Knight of the Seventh Step. It could transform into light and merge with light. At this time, Long Hao-chen was only at the 5th step, and he had just stepped into the 5th step. But he did it, even if it was a complete version of the body of light. He couldn't let external light easily pass through his body, but he did it. This was the constitution of the Son of Light. He had an affinity with light, which gave him absolute trust in all light elements. And the light elements also treated him as the ruler of light, the child of the God of light. Kind, gentle, and full of endless intimacy. After an unknown amount of time, the golden light quietly retreated. Long Hao-chen's body also returned to normal. But at this time, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Suddenly opening his eyes, Long Hao-chen saw a blue figure. Seeing this figure, he couldn't help but be shocked, because this blue figure looked exactly like him. But its body was transparent blue. A strong pressure suddenly came from a body that seemed to be formed by the blue light. The next moment, he raised his arms. 2 blue, heavy swords extended from his hands. Attack! At this moment, Long Hao-chen didn't even have any weapons on him, and he had just woken up from the wonderful feeling. He instinctively activated the spirit light bracer on his wrist. A layer of holy light rose up, and the pale golden light blocked the blue light's attack. Poof! The huge impact caused Long Hao-chen to retreat in an instant. The 2 blue, heavy swords simultaneously activated lightning stab, like rain falling on a banana leaf, hitting the holy light barrier. In just a second, the holy light barrier shattered, and the blue light rushed up, heading straight for Long Hao-chen. With this short buffer, Long Hao-chen was able to react. His hands also separated from his body, and 2 slightly slender golden long swords appeared in his hands. Spiritual weapon condensation. This was a weapon that was formed from spiritual energy. Although he didn't know what was attacking him, he could clearly feel that he was facing himself at this moment. In this situation, how could he resist without a weapon? Spiritual weapon condensation referred to the condensation of spiritual energy into a weapon, which could only be done after reaching the 5th rank. Long Hao-chen was currently only in Earth Knight level 1, so it was very difficult for him to use it. Moreover, spiritual weapon condensation consumed a lot of spiritual energy, so he wouldn't use it unless he had no other choice. With his Son of Light constitution, condensing these 2 thin swords directly consumed more than 500 points of inner spiritual energy. And during the process of battle, his spiritual energy would continue to be consumed. Facing the blue light's lightning stab, the thin swords in Long Hao-chen's hands also moved. The golden light flashed, and he actually used his sword to break the sword. Without using any skills, he blocked all of the blue light's attacks. The blue light seemed to only know how to attack like lightning stab, and its speed suddenly increased. Thousands of blue sword shadows attacked, like quicksilver. At this moment, Long Hao-chen felt like he had returned to the Owl Ant's cave. The 2 swords in his hands flew up and down, but his mind was still calm. No matter how fast the opponent's attacks were, he blocked them one by one. Long Hao-chen found that the opponent's attacks weren't very strong, and he could easily block them with spiritual weapon condensation. But even though Long Hao-chen didn't use any skills, his own spiritual energy was still being consumed quickly. According to this situation, it didn't seem to be advantageous. At this moment, Long Hao-chen suddenly found something strange. His perceptive sense was much higher than ordinary people, And while blocking the blue light's storm-like attacks, he also had the ability to observe the opponent. He found that the blue light's color seemed to have dimmed a lot. With each attack, its body would also become dimmer. During this period of time in the Monster Hunter Selection Tournament, Long Hao-Chen had also experienced a lot of matches, some wins and some losses, especially when facing a strong opponent. It was extremely important for him to increase his combat experience. Long Hao-Chen realized that in battle, not only did he have to pay attention to his own situation, but he also had to pay attention to the enemy's situation. It wasn't to observe the enemy's attack skills, but to observe the enemy's body and the strength of their spiritual energy. He was gradually developing this habit of observation. When the blue light first used lightning stab, it was clearly the most powerful, but when it broke through his holy light shroud, its attack power seemed to have decreased a lot. The holy light shroud obviously couldn't hurt the opponent, so why did its attack power suddenly decrease? And what about his own situation at that time? Thinking about it this way, Long Hao-Chen realized the mystery behind it. The blue light's spiritual energy strength seemed to be about the same as his own, and his spiritual energy decreased. As a result, its spiritual power would decline. When he used spiritual weapon condensation, his spiritual energy was greatly depleted, so its spiritual energy was also reduced, and its attack power was naturally affected. It was the same now. If that's the case, I just need to focus on defense. Just as Long Hao-Chen was thinking, suddenly, the blue light's figure paused for a moment. Its body soared into the air and spun rapidly. It was the fighting, slaying, revolving sword. It copied my skill? Long Hao-Chen was shocked. He himself knew the fighting, slaying, revolving sword, so he naturally knew how powerful this skill was when it was used. However, at this moment, Long Hao-Chen smiled. As he quickly retreated, he quickly chanted an incantation and raised the golden swords in both hands. At this moment, his powerful spiritual energy suddenly erupted, and he split his attention into 3 parts. The light sword in his left hand rippled with 3 halos: Faith Halo, Guardian Blessing, and True Shot Halo. The light sword in his right hand lit up with a dense white light. A dense white light lit up. It was the holy sword accumulating power. When his cultivation was at the 5th rank, he could use the holy sword again. He no longer needed to chant an incantation and only needed to go through the process of accumulating spiritual energy. At the same time, the holy light shroud on his spiritual light shroud was released, blocking the blue figure's first attack. As he retreated, Long Hao-Chen's incantation was completed. Angel's Blessing. Then, a loud dragon's roar resounded around Long Hao-Chen's body. Under the dense golden light, the spiritual energy around his body turned into scales, and he held the swords in both hands. It was the Rising Dragon Strike. Rising Dragon Strike was an attack skill that both the Guardian Knight and the Punishment Knight could learn. When Long Hao-Chen's cultivation reached the 5th rank, he naturally learned it from his father's inheritance ring. However, when he used this attack, the holy sword in his right hand was not completed. Puff! The 2 sides collided in the air, but in an instant, the blue figure had already collapsed, turning into countless blue specks of light that scattered in all directions. Bang! Long Hao-Chen's feet landed on the ground. His upper body swayed slightly, and his vision darkened. In that short period of time, he had used so many skills that even his extraordinary spiritual energy could not support it, and his face was pale. At this moment, the 2 swords in his hands had already dispersed. From start to finish, the holy sword skill in his right hand had not been completed. However, he won. He defeated the blue figure just like that. For the night, it was very easy for Long Hao-Chen to do this. The reason why he was able to win was because he had correctly judged the blue figure. The blue figure copied his skills and spiritual energy intensity. The skills did not change, but the spiritual energy intensity was adjusted according to his body. Under such circumstances, as Long Hao-Chen continued to resist, the blue figure's attack would never stop. If he was not careful, he would be taken advantage of. However, what if he ran out of spiritual energy? What else could the blue figure use to attack? Long Hao-Chen had used so many skills in a row not to defeat his opponent, but to exhaust his remaining spiritual energy as quickly as possible. Especially when he was about to exhaust his spiritual energy, he used his final skill. Without spiritual energy to support it, the battle-slaying revolving sword naturally could not withstand the impact of the rising dragon strike, so the blue figure dissipated. All of this seemed simple, but in reality, it was a combination of wisdom and strength. If Long Houchen had not blocked the blue figure's storm-like attack and not been injured, if he had not made a correct judgment and made a prompt decision, it was hard to say who would win this battle. Although the blue figure did not have any real killing intent, Long Houchen could vaguely feel that if he lost, he would probably lose something. Everything returned to darkness. All the light disappeared. In the darkness, only Long Houchen's light breathing could be heard. Suddenly, right in front of Long Houchen, a flash of light shone. Under the illumination of that light, everything around him became clear. A cave. It was still a cave, but it was a lot smaller than when he first saw it. In front of Long Houchen, there was a small circular platform. That light came from the center of the platform. It was a sword floating on the platform. The blade was facing down, the hilt was above. Compared to the traditional knight-heavy sword, this sword was a bit smaller. The blade was about 3 feet 6 inches long from the edge to the hilt. The total length was about 1 foot 2 inches. In total, it was 4 feet 8 inches. The blade was golden, but it was a reserved golden color. There were many fine inscriptions on the sword's spine. These inscriptions combined to form a strange hibiscus flower shape, all the way to the edge of the sword. The color of the edge changed. It was no longer golden, but a deep blue. The edge was wide and thick, carved into the shape of a dragon's head. The golden blade looked like it was spat out from the dragon's mouth, and the hilt that extended downwards was the dragon's body. Although the size of the dragon's body and the dragon's head were somewhat disproportionate, there was a strange sense of harmony. The deep blue sword's hilt rippled with a gentle blue halo. In the middle of the edge, where the dragon's eye should be, there was an oval golden gem that was slightly bigger than a gold coin inlaid on each side. The dragon's tail, which was closed at the end of the sword's hilt, had 3-inch-long forks, which looked very sharp. Where the forks converged, there was an aqua blue gem on each side. Seeing this sword, Long Houchen's eyes almost instantly widened. Ever since he became a knight, he had seen many weapons and equipment, especially the heavy sword that he used the most. Naturally, he paid the most attention to it. However, he had never seen a sword that could be forged as dazzling as the one in front of him. More importantly, he seemed to be able to feel that this sword was breathing, as if it had a life of its own. As soon as he stepped in, he felt the aura of the golden and blue light appear again. But this time, it was much gentler, especially the golden halo that rippled on the blade. It attracted Long Houchen step by step towards it. It was too beautiful. It was truly too beautiful. It was flawless. When Long Houchen's consciousness was slightly clearer, he was surprised to find that he had already stepped on the platform, standing right in front of this sword. He forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Is this the prize that Knights Templars gave me for the preliminary round? Even just by looking at it, he could feel how precious this sword was. He carefully raised his right hand and slowly held the hilt that was just inches away from him. In an instant, Long Houchen felt a strong suction force firmly pulling his palm, followed by a sharp pain coming from the center of his palm. Although he was shocked, Long Houchen did not try to let go of his palm, because he could clearly feel that the aura from this sword was telling him that it would not hurt him. Drops of blood flowed down Long Houchen's palm, into the hilt, and into the golden gem on the edge of the sword. The blood flowed upwards, soaking through the dragon's body, all the way to the blue gem on the dragon's tail. A violent tremor appeared in the next instant, and the long sword in his hand suddenly emitted thousands of rays of light. Long Houchen almost instinctively raised the long sword above his head. Golden light filled the sky, blue light coiled, and turned into a huge pillar of light that shot straight to the top of the cave. A strong spiritual fluctuation exploded in an instant. A cool and warm air instantly entered his palm, and in an instant, the pain in Long Houchen's palm disappeared. At the same time, 6 words slowly appeared in his mind in sequence. Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light. This was its name. Outside spirited Mount Valley, Yang Haohan had been quietly standing in the same place, looking in the direction of the valley. At this moment, there was one more person beside him. It was the Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Han Yen. Lord, do you think he can subdue that sword? So many years have passed, and countless people have tried, but they have all failed. This includes his father. Yang Haohan smiled slightly and said, I hope he succeeds. This sword, Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, was passed down from the glorious era. It was originally 2 swords, but they were later fused into one by a divine smith. This sword has its own sword spirit and was sealed by the ancient elven royal family with a psionic storm. Anyone who gets close to it will be pulled into the seal for a test. Only those who pass the test have a chance of obtaining it. No one knows to what extent the power of this Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, can reach. According to the records left behind by the ancient elven royal family, they call this sword the Sword of Miracles. Ever since it was forged, it has never had a master, because no one has been able to gain the recognition of the 2 sword spirits. Therefore, the High Elven royal family sealed it here with a psionic storm, waiting for the fated one. It is said that the most amazing thing about this Sword of Miracles is that as long as it recognizes its master, it will only be used by that master. It is like a bloodline equipment. No matter how strong its master is, it will have corresponding strength. The 2 sword spirits will grow with the growth of their master. Have you ever heard of weapons and equipment that can grow? Moreover, it can grow on its own without the need for any embedding or inscription. This is something that even a divine artifact can't do. Han Q's eyes were full of surprise, as expected of the Sword of Miracles. If that's the case, if Houchen can get its approval, then this sword can continue to be used. Yang Haohan laughed. Don't ask me. No one has owned this sword, and there are no records of its use. Who can say for sure? Han Qin chuckled and said, Hall Master, you bled a lot this time. Yang Haohan smiled faintly and said, No one can use this sword anyway, so why not let him have a try? Sheng Yu, that old guy, even gave the Sword of Samsara to the Saint of Samsara. We, the Knights Templars, also have a Son of Light. It's just a Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. Are we still not willing to take it out? We can't lose to them. I didn't expect Sheng Yu to have such a son. But I don't understand why he didn't send his son to the temple to train him when he found out that he has the constitution of the Son of Light. Han Q said, Maybe it's for the heart's temperament. Yang Haohan was slightly stunned, but immediately understood. He said, You mean Sheng Yu wants this child to become stronger through training in the outside world. This way, he will have a stronger survival ability. Han Q smiled and nodded. He said, At least for now, in my eyes, this child is absolutely qualified to be a knight. It's rare to see someone at his age. Good talent also needs to appear in the right person. Only then can it blossom the most resplendent brilliance. Just as he said this, in the distance, in the Riding Spirit Valley, a bright light shot up into the sky. Gold and blue, the 2 colors blended. The gold light was in the center, and the blue light was outside. In an instant, the blue sky and white clouds in the sky dimmed. It really worked. Yang Haohan's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Han Q's mouth was wide open. That's too fast. This. Yang Haohan laughed heartily and said, I've already expected this. This child has the constitution of the Son of Light. Although Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light are dual attributes, they are mainly light. Will the light attribute attack him when it meets the constitution of the Son of Light? Don't worry, just wait. He still needs to go through a process of fusion. Han Q frowned and said, Sigh, now that I think about it, the other equipment I prepared for him is a little unpresentable. Yang Haohan looked at him meaningfully. He said, You just explained it to me. Why can't you understand it yourself? We can't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. He has to rely on his own efforts to move forward step by step and finally surpass us. All right, is there any news from Sheng Yu? Han Q sighed and shook his head. Not yet. After his battle with Anan was seriously injured, and he disappeared. Yang Hao nodded. He said, "Tell the relevant people to treat this matter as top secret. Especially not to tell this child Haochen. I don't want his temperament to be affected." In the letter Xingyu left me, he said that if he can't return after his battle with Anan, I can't tell Haochen before he breaks through to the 7th demon god. Han Q sighed. He said, "I really don't understand why Palace Master Long had to challenge the 7th demon god. He could have just not agreed to that challenge." Yang Haohan shook his head. He said, "No, he has to go. This is his responsibility. If you can break through to the 9th demon god in your lifetime, you will also know what this responsibility is. Continue to have people investigate Anan's injuries." "Yes." Han Q nodded in response. Yang Haohan sighed inwardly. "Xingyu, oh Xingyu, why didn't you tell us in the letter that this little Haochen has the constitution of the Son of Light? Could it be to give us a surprise? Don't worry. No matter what happens to you, I will help you look after your son. I will help him become the next you. No, he will even surpass you. The Son of Light. Perhaps he has the possibility of sitting on the first throne of God, bathed in the golden infiltration and blue nourishment." Long Haochen gradually entered a strange state. He vaguely felt that there was something extra in his body. His entire body felt like it was soaking in warm spring water. It was indescribably comfortable. After an unknown period of time, Long Haochen gradually woke up. He was surprised to find that he was standing at the entrance of the spirited Mount Valley. Not far in front of him was the rippling golden fog. Long Haochen subconsciously looked at his right hand. However, his right hand was empty. However, his arm was still in a raised position. "Where's the sword? Where's my blue rain and hibiscus of light?" Long Haochen immediately looked around anxiously. He didn't find the sword, but he saw a person. Yang Haohan looked at him with a smile. "Don't look for it. It's in your body." "In my body?" Long Haochen looked at Yang Haohan in surprise. "Grandfather Yang, what's going on?" Yang Haohan smiled. "This is a miraculous sword. In view of your outstanding performance in the preliminary round, we, the Knights Templars, decided to let you try and see if you can pass its test. You know the result yourself. You passed, so it's yours now?" Long Haochen asked doubtfully, "Then what do you mean by it entering my body?" Yang Haohan smiled. "Don't worry. I will tell you everything I know about blue rain and hibiscus of light. Even I don't know what kind of power this sword has. Since the day it was created, no one has ever used it. But according to the temple's research over the years, it's certain that it's a spiritual weapon." Long Haochen was surprised. "Spiritual weapon? What's a spiritual weapon?" Yang Haohan said, "A spiritual weapon is a spiritual weapon. I believe you've been tested by it." "That's right. It's the sword spirit's test for you. Although a sword spirit doesn't have true spiritual intelligence, it has its instincts. A weapon with a weapon spirit has unlimited possibilities. Blue rain and hibiscus of light have unlimited potential. But you should also know that the more powerful a weapon is, the more ability is needed to use it. But this sword doesn't need to be like that, because it will grow along with you. Right now, it should have already fused with your body. Its own ability will nourish your body, and your spirit force will nurture its continuous growth. Simply put, this is a weapon that can evolve. You can use your inner vision to look for it." Hearing this, Long Haochen hurriedly used his inner vision. Once he used his inner vision, he immediately discovered that a strange change had occurred within his body. The originally rotating Saint's spiritual stove and his own liquid spiritual power didn't have any changes. Moreover, the spiritual power that was exhausted during the test had already been completely restored. The strange thing was that above the Saint's spiritual stove floated a miniature sword. Looking at its appearance, wasn't it blue rain and hibiscus of light? Faint gold and blue rippled with a soft golden blue luster. Long Haochen used his inner vision to sense that blue rain and hibiscus of light were bathing in his liquid spiritual power. They seemed to be faintly absorbing his liquid spiritual power. The absorption rate wasn't large, but it was more like they were being nourished by the spiritual power. And the golden blue luster it emitted was slowly spreading, dispersing into every corner of his body. It stimulated his body to constantly produce a soft and warm feeling. This feeling was very slight, and if he didn't concentrate, he wouldn't be able to discover it. But he could vaguely feel that this light seemed to be strengthening his body. What life needs the most is light and water. For plants, as long as there is light and water, they can survive. Although humans have more needs, light and water are also what the human body needs the most. According to our many years of research and judgment, it should be helpful in strengthening your external spiritual power. But this requires a subtle process and can't be accomplished in one step. Yang Haohan's voice reached Long Haochen's ears, awakening him from his state of concentration. Opening his eyes, Long Haochen slowly raised his right hand. His mind connected with the miniature sword above the saint's spiritual stove. With a slight movement of his mind, a ray of light flashed, and the dragon-shaped sword hilt appeared in his hand. The golden blade seemed to have spat out from the dragon's mouth on the hilt of the sword, glittering with golden light. Compatibility. When blue rain and hibiscus of light appeared again, Long Haochen's first feeling was compatibility. It was completely different from the first time he held this sword. At this moment, he only felt that this sword was like a part of his body. Some strange and mysterious things were slowly appearing in his consciousness. It seemed that this sword was telling him something. Yang Haohan faintly smiled and said, "Go back and slowly experience it. Tomorrow, the finals of the top 16 will begin. This old man wishes you a good result in advance." Tomorrow? Long Haochen was startled. "Didn't you say that I can rest for 2 days after the end of the group stage?" Yang Haohan smiled and said, "Little guy, you've already been here for 3 days. Do you think it's that easy to fuse with a spiritual tool? You being able to complete it in 3 days already proves that your compatibility with it is quite astonishing. Your teacher side has already been notified by someone from the temple, so there's no need to worry." "It's already been 3 days?" Long Haochen was surprised and hastily bid farewell to Yang Haohan. Under Yang Haohan's guidance, he once again stepped into the huge light door. A ray of light flashed through the wall. Long Haochen had already returned to the small hall of the Holy Alliance's treasury pavilion. The surroundings were empty, and no one appeared. By then, Long Haochen had already understood that there was probably no need for any guards here. Without special means, it was impossible to enter the treasury pavilion. In fact, there were only a few people in any temple who were qualified to enter the treasury pavilion of the Holy Alliance and take care of the Holy Alliance's temple. When he walked out of the treasury pavilion, there were still 2 people guarding outside, but they weren't the fat and skinny old men from that day. Instead, they were 2 middle-aged men who looked harmless and were dressed in plain clothes. At most, they looked to be in their 40s. The 2 of them kindly smiled at Long Haochen. Were they really harmless? Long Haochen wanted to investigate their situation carefully, but he was shocked to find that the 2 middle-aged men gave him the feeling that they were actually quiet and distant, as if they didn't have any ability, yet they seemed to be as deep as the abyss. This was indeed the headquarters of the Holy Alliance. He really didn't know how many experts there were in this sacred city. After bowing to the 2 middle-aged men in a hurry, Long Haochen then walked quickly. "Master!" Han Yu's voice sounded, and he greeted him from the side. "You have been waiting for me." Long Haochen looked at him in surprise. Han Yu nodded and said, "I am your retainer knight, so naturally, I have to follow you." It was very obvious that he had already completely understood his position. Long Haochen smiled very brightly and didn't say anything else. He brought Han Yu back to the hotel. What made Long Haochen a little depressed was that regardless of whether it was his teacher or sister, they were all training in the room. Actually, he most wanted to ask Li Xian about how Kai Er was these few days, but it wasn't good to disturb their training. Helplessly, he could only return to his room and train himself. With regards to the hibiscus of light, he still had a lot to understand, otherwise, how would he be able to bring out its power? Early morning, Yihua knocked on Long Haochen's door. Seeing his teacher again, Long Haochen got a shock, because he discovered to his surprise that the gloominess on his teacher's face had actually completely disappeared, and instead, he had a feeling of being in high spirits. It was as if in these few days, he had actually become 10 years younger. Teacher, Yihua chuckled. The muscles on his face didn't seem to be that stiff anymore. I finally broke through to 3,000 spiritual energy level. In the past, I kept telling myself, as if I was hypnotized, that talent wasn't important. But these few days, for the first time, I experienced the importance of talent in training. After so many years of accumulation, I finally have the opportunity to make a breakthrough. Long Haochen, thank you. No. Long Haochen immediately felt a little embarrassed. Teacher, this is what I should do. It's good that I was able to help you. Yihua smiled and said, All right, there's no need to say those courteous words between us teacher and disciple. These are given to you by your grandmaster. After the competition ends, your teacher will also stay in the sacred city to train with your grandmaster. And you will also have to join the monster hunters to train. These equipment will be very useful to you. Chapter 40. As he spoke, he took out something that looked like a bracelet and pointed at the ground beside Long Haochen. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and several pieces of equipment appeared there. Without a doubt, this bracelet had a similar function to the Forget-Me-Not ring. Although this kind of storage bracelet was rare, Han Q was the leader of the Knights Templars, the Holy Knight, so it was not surprising that he had it. Equipment? One would only know how to cherish it after losing it. Long Haochen had deeply experienced the helplessness of losing all his equipment before. As soon as he heard that there was equipment that could be used, his eyes immediately lit up, and he couldn't wait to look at the equipment. It was a full body armor, a sword, and a shield. These 3 pieces of equipment were all silver in color, and they exuded a faint aura of light. It felt like they should be at the same level as his previous armor and light sword. At most, they were slightly stronger. However, even so, it was already a great surprise for Long Haochen. After losing the shield and light sword, he did not stop asking about the price of magic equipment. Each of them cost thousands of gold coins, which made people flinch at the sight of it. To be able to gather a set, he was already very satisfied. Yihua smiled and said, This set of equipment is called the Holy Spirit set. Holy Spirit armor, Holy Spirit shield, Holy Spirit sword. If taken out individually, they're all magic equipment. But the advantage is that it is a set. When combined together, it can produce the Holy Spirit halo. You can control your allies according to your thoughts. The radius of the halo reaches a diameter of 20 meters. It can form a layer of Holy Spirit armor on the surface of the body, and its defense is comparable to the Holy Light barrier. Maintaining this halo requires 5 points of spiritual power. This is a very good Guardian Knight equipment, and it is very useful for the team. So, when combined, this set is equivalent to a Spirit Demon equipment. It is even better than the Holy Light bracelet that teacher gave you. Great! Long Haochen squatted down excitedly. He first put the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield into the Forget-Me-Not ring, and then put on the Holy Spirit armor. A faint smile appeared on Yihua's face. This child really has a pure and kind nature. He didn't despise the fact that this was only a magic rank equipment given by a Holy Knight captain. The excitement in his eyes couldn't be faked. Teacher, if you see the Grandmaster, you must thank him for me. I will definitely use this equipment to win glory for our Knights Templars. The Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed of better quality than his original armor. This Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. This armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. Yihua patted his shoulder and said, All right, go to the Sanctuary Alliance's trial field with your big sister, Exinair. From now on, it will be a knockout competition. Everyone only one chance, and each one. Everyone one chance. One chance. One. Everyone one chance, one chance. Try to get into the top 3. I guarantee to complete the mission. Long Haochen thumped his chest with his right fist and performed a standard knight salute to Yihua. After he said that, the teacher and disciple couldn't help but laugh. On the other side, Haoyue, who was curled up on Long Haochen's bed, slowly raised his 3 heads and shook his body. His heavy body immediately made the bed creak. I won't forget about you. Long Haochen laughed at him. After getting the new armor, Long Haochen was very excited. He even wore the armor for breakfast. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, under Yi Hua's gaze, he went to the Holy Alliance's great training field with Lin Xian. As for his squire, he didn't have the right to watch the battle. Long Haochen let Han Yu stay in the hotel to train. Big sister, how is Kair these few days? She isn't angry at me, right? Long Haochen asked Lin Xian. Lin Xian giggled and said, "Look at how careful you are. We haven't confirmed our relationship yet, and you are already so worried about her. She will definitely be a henpecked husband in the future." Long Haochen blushed and quickly explained, "Big sister, we are just ordinary friends." Lin Xian laughed and said, Okay. Ordinary friends, right? Then you can go and find out about her situation yourself." Long Haochen suddenly became a little anxious. He pulled Lin Xian's arm and said, "Big sister, I was wrong. Tell me quickly." Lin Xian rolled her eyes and said, "You've been exposed." Okay. Big sister promises that you will be able to see her today." No matter how Long Haochen asked, Lin Xian refused to say when she would be able to see Kai. Not long after, the siblings arrived at the Holy Alliance's great training field. The top 16 finals would be held at the Knights' great training field. All the contestants who entered the top 60 could come and watch the battle. When the two arrived at the entrance, they met a familiar face. Two men walked over from not far away and handed over their number plates at the entrance. They were Yang Wenjiao and Huang Yi. It seemed that the two of them knew each other long ago. "Brother Yang, Brother Huang, nice to meet you." Although they were competitors, they already knew each other. When Long Haochen and Lin Xian walked over, he took the initiative to greet them. When Yang Wenjiao saw him, his expression changed, and he said with a bitter face, "I'm not too good. I'm just hoping that I don't get you when it comes to drawing lots." With that, he hurried in. Looking at him as if he had met a ghost, Long Haochen couldn't help but be a little stunned. What's wrong with him? Was this still the same expert who defeated him without a mount the other day? Could it be that he doesn't have the confidence to face me? Yang Wenjiao naturally wasn't afraid of him. If it was a head-on battle, he even had the confidence to fight Kai Er. However, the strongest aspect of an assassin was obviously not in a head-on battle. He really didn't want to be targeted by an assassin of Kai Er's level, especially since his grandfather didn't pursue the matter that day. One could imagine how shocking the assassin's background was. When Huang Yi saw that Long Haochen was much better, he smiled and greeted him. "Brother Huang, I didn't go to the competition that day. Between you and Wang Yuan, who advanced in the end?" Long Haochen asked curiously. Huang Yi said with a hint of pride, Lucky. Wang Yuan's strength was indeed very strong. In a head-on battle, I definitely wasn't her opponent, so I used a little trick. My elf companion and I joined hands to cast a spell. While she was installing the gems and activating the divine giant soul shield, we completed the earth wave spell. Speaking of which, it really wasn't very glorious. I used the earth wave spell to escape the entire competition. In the end, she exhausted all her spiritual power and barely won. I still have to thank you. If she didn't use the divine giant soul shield right from the start, I really don't know who would have won in a normal competition. Hearing him say this, Long Haochen understood that Huang Yi had used Wang Yuan's inertia. That girl's strength was indeed strong. Long Haochen also felt that it was a pity that she didn't enter the top 16. Shameless. Just as they were talking, an angry voice came from behind them. When the two turned around to look, wasn't it Wang Yuan? Beside her was Chuning Er. Chuning Er's complexion wasn't very good either. The little lowly quickly walked in front of Long Haochen and waved her little fist at him. "Are you looking down on me? You didn't even come to the last round." Long Haochen said helplessly, "Of course not. I just happened to be busy that day. I apologize to you." Chuning Er stuck out her tongue at him. Before she could say anything, Wang Yuan, who was so angry that she almost killed Huang Yi with her eyes, pulled him into the training field. Clearly, after the preliminaries, these two girls had formed a good friendship. Huang Yi looked at the divine soul shield on Wang Yuan's back with lingering fear. He shook his head helplessly and said, I'm hoping that I won't be in the same group as this girl in the Monster Hunter's Roulette. A shield warrior who doesn't know defense and is so impulsive. I'm really afraid of her. Lin Xen patted Long Haochen's shoulder and said, "Let's go in. It's getting late." "Wait for me," a hurried voice called out. When the siblings turned around, they met a familiar face. It was none other than the incomparably strange magician Lin Xen, who didn't know how to attack. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations on entering the top 16 at the same time. Lin Xen ran over with a face full of smiles. Lin Xen didn't have a good expression on her face. "What's there to congratulate? We don't deserve your congratulations." Lin Xen paused and smiled apologetically. "What's wrong, Sister Lin Xen? I didn't do anything." Lin Xen said angrily, "You didn't do anything? You don't even know how to use a single offensive spell, yet you tricked my brother into agreeing to let you enter the top 3. Don't you know how important a strong magician is to a team?" When she said this, Huang Yi was the first to open his eyes wide. "What? You don't know how to use offensive spells?" He grabbed Lin Xen, and his expression was even uglier than Lin Xen's. Lin Xen slapped his hand away. "So what if I don't know how to use offensive spells? I have medicine." At that time, he relied on his strong control over magic and bribed Huang Yi with medicinal pills to sit on the throne of the Magic Temple's preliminary competition. Now that Huang Yi heard that he didn't know how to use offensive spells, it would be strange if his expression was good. Long Haochen pulled Lin Xen, who still wanted to argue with Lin Xen, and said indifferently, "Sister, don't be like this. If it wasn't for this, Lin Xen wouldn't have given me medicinal pills. His pills helped me a lot, so I should be thanking him. Brother Lin, don't worry. If I enter the top 3, I will definitely keep my promise." "Then what about Kair?" Lin Xen almost blurted out. Long Haochen was stunned. "That's right. Kair also entered the top 60. In an instant, his face turned pale. If he entered the top 3, but could only choose Lin Xen, what about Kair? He remembered the promise he made not long ago very clearly. "I promised to protect her for life." Lin Xen looked at the somewhat absent-minded Long Haochen, and his heart sank. His face revealed a slightly helpless, bitter smile. He lightly shook his head, but didn't say anything. He patted Long Haochen's shoulder and walked in. Thinking that although the girl was strong, she couldn't see, he felt that he couldn't say anything. Lin Xen also saw that Long Haochen didn't look good, so she quickly comforted him. "Now is not the time to think about this. You have to think about it if you can really enter the top 3. Long Haochen felt slightly relieved. He nodded and said, "Let's go in first." Today, the night's trial field was obviously much more grand. Although the situation in the field had not changed, the rostrum was crowded, and it was obvious that there were many people. Without a doubt, they were all the higher-ups of the temple. At this time, more than 40 people from the top 60 of this year's Monster Hunter's trial had arrived. They were all sitting in the resting area, and the top 16 participants for today's knockout competition were sitting in the front. Although the others didn't need to participate, they still came to watch the competition. One reason was that they hoped to learn the fighting methods and experience of the top 16 participants through watching the competition. At the same time, more importantly, when the knockout competition was over, it would be the roulette competition. Who didn't want to know more about the abilities of the potential future team leader? As soon as Long Haochen entered the resting area, he quickly looked around. Many people's eyes fell on him, especially the knight and the previous participants of the third group. Found it. Long Haochen completely ignored the other people's eyes, and soon he found his target. Kai, who sat quietly in the corner of the edge of the first row, with the green bamboo stick erected in front of her and leaning on her shoulder. She looked very quiet. In Long Haochen's eyes, it was a feeling of purity and beauty, because when he obtained blue rain and hibiscus of light, Long Haochen was completely immersed in them and didn't feel that he hadn't seen Kair for a long time. Seeing that she was sitting there, he hurried to walk over with Lin Xen. The originally quiet Kai clearly recognized his footsteps. She slightly lowered her head and subconsciously tightened her hands on the green bamboo stick. "Kair, Long Haochen called her and sat down next to her. Yes, Kai replied softly, and then she pursed her lips and refused to speak. I went to the treasure pavilion of the Covenant Alliance these days, and I just came out last night. Kyr also gave a sound of agreement. Kyr, what happened to you that day? Long Haochen asked a question in his heart. This time, Kyr didn't even respond with an in. She just sat there quietly, but the tips of her ears were already red. Although Long Haochen didn't show up for a few days, Lin Xian had already told Kaya what he was going to do, so Kirk naturally was in a hurry. However, every time she thought of being hugged by Long Haochen that day and her own misunderstanding, she would blush and her heart would race. Now that she heard Long Haochen's voice again, how could she not be shy? Long Haochen didn't know what was on the little girl's mind. He frowned and said, Kai, why are you angry? I didn't do anything. If you are angry, tell me why, okay? I can change. Lin Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. This young couple was really interesting. Looking at Kai she was obviously shy, not angry. Who knows what the two of them did that day? However, feeling the pure affection between them, Lin Xian was more or less envious. She thought to herself, when would there be someone who would care for her, like how her younger brother cared for Kai? Long Haochen didn't worry for too long. Just when he was scratching his head, a soft little hand quietly reached over and held his hand. Holding the soft and tender little hand in his palm, Long Haochen was stunned for a moment. Following that, his heart calmed down. His anxiety was gone, and he sat there happily. Even if he was ignorant about relationships, he knew that Kai, who didn't blame him. In this important elimination round, naturally no one would be late. In a short while, all 60 participants had arrived. Sitting in the first row, Long Haochen didn't know many people. Other than him, Lin Xian, and Kai, there were only Huang Yi and Yang Wenjiao. There were also 2 Knight Templars that he hadn't fought before. Those 2 were naturally the 5th Order powerhouses from the preliminary round. Long Haochen observed for a moment. There were exactly 16 people sitting in the first row. Among them, the Knights Templars occupied 5 seats, while the Temple of the Priests didn't have a single one. It was obvious that the Knight Templars were ranked first among the 6 temples for a reason. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He turned his head to look at Kai, and asked, Kai, the first row seems to be for those who are participating in today's elimination round. Lin Xian finally couldn't help but laugh. Silly boy, sometimes you're really stupid. Who said that Kai, can't participate in the elimination round? She's the first in our second group. Long Haochen's eyes widened in shock. He almost let go of that soft little hand. Kai raised her head slightly and said softly, You didn't ask me. I'm an assassin. This news was absolutely shocking to Long Haochen. Naturally, he knew that Kai was an assassin, but she couldn't see. Even though she couldn't see, she was able to get to first place in the second group. What did this mean? Long Haochen was at a loss. Everyone, welcome to the Knight training field. At this moment, a familiar voice came from the training field. When Long Haochen looked up, he saw that the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Han Qiu, had arrived at the training field and was talking to the resting area. Although he didn't use any amplifying magic tools, everyone could hear his voice clearly. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the contestants who made it to the top 16. Entering the top 16 means that you will receive a reward from the Alliance. After the competition, you can choose a secret technique that suits you the most from the Sanctuary Alliance's treasure vault. Every time you pass an elimination round, the reward will increase accordingly. As for the other contestants who didn't make it to the top 16, don't be discouraged. Passing the preliminary round and entering the top 60 has already proved your excellence. You will also become an indispensable part of the Monster Hunters in the future. The Temple League has never been about formality, so I won't say much. Now, the top 16 contestants will enter the field and draw lots. From this moment onwards, luck will be an important factor in whether you can continue to advance. And I always believe that luck is a part of strength. Quietly withdrew her hand and stood up with the support of the green bamboo cane. Long Haochen knew that she was shy in front of so many people and didn't want him to hold her hand. Naturally, he didn't say anything. The 16 contestants sitting in the first row filed in and walked into the trial field. Although the other 44 contestants didn't need to participate in the following individual competition, they were equally nervous. Without a doubt, every elimination round would be a showdown between the strong, and the competition would definitely be extremely exciting. It was also related to the roulette team that would be formed soon. They all wanted to see who would be able to defeat the crowd and become the one standing at the top. After the staff checked the contestant number again to confirm their identity, the 16 people entered the trial field and stood in a circle around Han Q. At this moment, another 5 old men walked into the field and stood beside Han Q. Among these 5 old men was the Hall Master of the Assassin Temple's Chivalry Hall and the Deputy Hall Master Ing Sui Feng, who controlled the most powerful 36 chivalrous assassins in the Temple of Assassins. Deputy Hall Master of the Magic Temple, Sacred Mage Tutor, leader of the Magician Group, Lin Chun. Of course, Long Haochen didn't know that this old man was Lin Xine's grandfather. Deputy Hall Master of the Temple of the Priests, Cardinal Bishop, Temple Master of the Temple of Sacrifice, Ruo Shui. Deputy Hall Master of the Warrior Temple, Hall Master of the Berserk Hall, Combat Emperor Ranker. Let me be crazy. The last person was an old woman dressed in a black robe embroidered with golden runes. Compared to Ruo Shui's gentleness, she seemed a little domineering, and her eyes were clear. She wasn't tall, but after entering the trial field, she was the one who brought the most pressure to everyone. If one felt it carefully, it was actually a terrifying pressure that was close to that of a prehistoric giant beast. This was the Deputy Hall Master of the Soul Temple, Hall Master of the Spirit Fantasy Hall, Spirit Emperor, Summoner San Shui. Just as everyone felt, perhaps this San Shui Popo's cultivation was not the strongest among the 6 Deputy Hall Masters, but she was definitely the most terrifying one among the 6. Han Q smiled and said, "Everyone, shall we begin?" The other 5 nodded in agreement. Although there were 6 of them here, the other 5 were only there to supervise, and the drawing of lots was presided over by Han Q alone. The ball of light that everyone had seen many times appeared once again and slowly descended from the sky. The ball of light expanded in the sky and gradually turned into a huge golden halo. When it landed on the ground, it just happened to separate the 16 participants and the 6 Deputy Temple Masters. The Deputy Hall Masters were inside the halo, while the 16 participants were outside. A golden light flashed in Han Q's hand, and instantly, the entire halo shone brightly. Place one of your hands on the halo. The drawing of lots is about to begin. You can be at ease. The first place of the group will be drawn together with the second place of the other groups. Following Han Q's instructions, everyone placed their hands on the halo. The other 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the circle slowly closed their eyes and used their enormous mental power to feel the drawing of lots. The most nervous one was actually Han Q. As the Deputy Hall Master of the Knights Templars, he naturally hoped that the participants of the temple could advance further. This time, the Knights Templars had an unprecedented 5 participants in the top 16. In front of the other temple members, Han Q definitely had a lot of face. If all 5 of them could enter the top 8, how wonderful would that be? The drawing of lots began. A gentle golden light flashed rapidly after all 16 hands landed on the halo. It rotated at a high speed and instantly dyed the 16 participants' bodies gold. Gradually, rays of light shone one after another, and the gold color on every participant's body began to change. The main change was in the intensity of the gold color. Buzz, the halo's light faded, and the 16 participants, including Long Haochen, looked at the light on their bodies. The 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the halo opened their eyes at the same time. Other than Ruo Shui, the other 4 Deputy Hall Masters had a gloating look in their eyes. However, Han Q's expression became extremely ugly. The facts had proven that even without the supervision of the 5 Deputy Hall Masters, no one would question the fairness of the drawing of lots this time. The 5 participants of the Knights Templars had actually gathered into 2.5 pairs. That was to say, no matter what the results of this round were, the Knights Templars would at most have 3 participants in the top 8. The 2 unfamiliar Tier 5 Knight had drawn 1 pair, and the intensity of their light was exactly the same. As for the other pair, it was the siblings Long Houchin and Lin Xian. Long Houchin's expression instantly changed to one of shock, and he looked at Lin Xian with an ugly expression. He had never imagined that he would still be able to maintain such a speechless luck. A 1 in 8 chance, and he had actually drawn his sister. The holy magus Lin Chun coughed and patted Han Q's shoulder, saying, "Brother Han is indeed the envoy of light. The drawing of lots this time is fair and just, and our magic temple has acknowledged it." Ing Suifeng was the most familiar with Han Q, and he laughed without a care for his image. "Old Han, your Knights Templars are indeed very strong, but your luck, tisk tisk." Han Q's face turned green, and he glared at him fiercely. The Battle Emperor Rin Wuquang laughed heartily and said, "Shadow, don't say that. The result of the drawing of lots is still very beneficial to the Knights Templars, and they have at least 2 of the top 8 spots. Doesn't that increase their chances of advancing to the top 3? The Spirit Emperor Summoner, San Shui, snorted coldly. "You fellows, what else can you do besides gloat? If you have the ability, get 5 of your people into the top 16 as well." "Thanks, old Han. Our Soul Temple is indeed lucky that they didn't overlap." Other than the Knights Templars, the Soul Temple was in the limelight this time round. Other than Chun Ing who didn't even know what she would summon but could use the Living Soul Gate, there were actually 3 other outstanding summoners who advanced to the top 16. Furthermore, 2 of them were rank 4. It could be seen how powerful summoners were. In the drawing of lots, just now, these 3 summoners would be facing opponents from other temple, and it was no wonder that the cold-faced Spirit Emperor San Shui was in a good mood. Han Q's heart was bleeding. The elimination round hadn't even started, and the Knights Templars were already down 2 people. However, he couldn't lose his temper in front of so many juniors, and his face alternated between red and white. "Look at all of you are so smug. Look at how calm Ruo Shui is." Ruo Shui sighed helplessly and said, "I have no choice but to be calm. None of our Temple of the Priests' people entered the top 16. The result of this drawing has nothing to do with me." Han Q was suddenly speechless and said fiercely, "Go back to the resting area and start the competition according to the color of the golden light on your body, from light to dark. The first group stay in the arena." After saying this, he walked towards the rostrum angrily without looking back. The huge golden halo also rose slowly and disappeared into the dome. "Sister, Long Houchin wanted to say something to Lin Xian. Lin Xian shook her head at him with a smile and said, "Silly brother, what are you doing? What's there to be embarrassed about? Do you think I can continue to advance if I meet someone else? I can enter the top 16 thanks to Kai Er's help. I'm already very satisfied. I didn't even think I could enter the top 60. Meeting you in the drawing of lots is actually the best for me. Since I'm going to lose anyway, isn't it the best situation to send you into the top 8? But Long Houchin still wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Xian again. "Idiot, what but is there? Do you think I can beat you when I'm grade 4? Or do you think my Rose can beat that little monster Hao Yue? It has also evolved." Most of the other contestants had already walked towards the resting area, but Kai was still waiting beside Long Houchin, listening to the conversation between the siblings. This, you guys aren't in the first group, right?" A somewhat helpless voice sounded from the side. Long Houchin and Lin Xian turned their heads and saw Yang Wenjiao and another female summoner looking at them strangely. And the golden light on these 2 was the lightest. The female summoner's magic robe was covered with a cloak, and her head was slightly lowered, so her face could not be seen clearly. "Oh, sorry." Long Houchin nodded to him and hurriedly returned to the resting area with Lin Xian and Kai. Unbeknownst to them, Yang Wenjiao was also relieved. At least, he didn't draw either Long Houchin or Kai. Even without the psychological trauma from before, these 2 opponents were the most difficult to deal with. "Kai, who is your opponent?" Lin Xian asked Kai. who was beside Long Houchen. Kai shook her head and said, I can't see the color, so I don't know. Hearing her words, Long Houchen suddenly felt a strong sense of self-blame. He was so focused on himself and Lin Xin that he forgot that Kai couldn't see. He held her little hand apologetically. Don't worry, I'll go ask the staff. Just as Long Houchen went to ask the staff, the first round of the round of 16 began. Yang Wenjiao still didn't summon his mount. He brandished his dual swords and rushed towards the summoner opposite him like lightning. In a match between a knight and a summoner, both sides had to maintain a distance of 50 meters. The summoner opposite Yang Wenjiao held a green staff in his hand and quickly chanted an incantation. At the same time, he didn't stop and quickly retreated. Yang Wenjiao's charging speed was quite fast, but even so, the female summoner opposite him had already completed his first summon when he had just rushed 20 meters away. A green light floated from the front of the staff, and the moment it landed, a circle of green light rippled. Suddenly, thick vines drilled out of the ground and spread in an instant. This was a plant summoner. At this moment, if Yang Wenjiao didn't want to go head-on with these vines, he had to take a detour. Naturally, Yang Wenjiao wouldn't choose to do so. He rushed forward without hesitation. A brilliant golden light appeared on the two heavy swords. His footsteps quickened again, and he changed from charging to attacking. The two swords in his hands danced, and two light, slashing swords swept out at the same time, flying close to the ground. Although the vines were tough, they were still fragile in front of the light, slashing swords. Several vines were instantly cut apart. Yang Wenjiao's strength was undoubtedly shown at this moment. He brazenly rushed into the group of vines. He didn't use any other skills. The dual swords were impenetrable, and any vines that rushed into his swords would be instantly minced. His speed was only slightly reduced, but he was still able to pass through the vines like a hot knife through butter. At this time, the female summoner opposite him had already completed her second summoning spell. Faced with Yang Wenjiao's charge, the summoner didn't panic. This time, a dark green light rippled out. Suddenly, a large patch of thorns emerged from the ground. Not only did it block Yang Wenjiao's path, but it also hid his figure within it. A clanging sound exploded in an instant. Yang Wenjiao's forward charging figure was actually blocked. These dark green thorns, which looked much thinner than the vines, were actually as hard as iron. Although they still couldn't contend against Yang Wenjiao's dual swords, they made it so that he could no longer advance at the speed of an attack. He could only advance step by step. At this time, Long Houchen had already asked the staff. He confirmed that Kai, or his opponent, was another summoner. He was also attracted by the battle in the arena. As for summoners, Long Houchen was the least familiar with them. The only summoner he had seen in a battle was Chuning, Er's living soul gate. The summoner fighting against Yang Wenjiao was obviously more reliable than Chuning Er. The speed at which she released 2 summoning spells in a row was actually this fast. Dang, right at this moment, Yang Wenjiao's feet suddenly came to a stop, and a violent sound of impact rang out. His body also swayed, and he actually stopped. Long Houchen's eyesight was still quite good. He clearly saw that a red thorn more than a foot long bounced up from Yang Wenjiao's sword. That was obviously the attack that had just sneaked up on him. Because the resting area was above, Long Houchen could see that the summoner was still in the midst of the thorns. He didn't use the protection of the thorns to retreat. Beside him, there was a strange plant that was as tall as a person and needed a person to wrap their arms around it. This plant was covered in thorns, and there was a big red flower at the top. The red thorn just now was thrown out from its body. Long Houchen was very clear about Yang Wenjiao's strength. A thorn was able to push him back, so one could imagine the strength of its attack. Long Houchen focused and watched carefully. He could see that the strange plant's whole body trembled violently. Then, the dark red thorns on its body quickly condensed and actually gathered together. Then, it turned into a thorn more than a foot long and shot out explosively, targeting Yang Wenjiao. Good heavens, plant summoning could actually be used like this? This was an eye-opener for Long Houchen. Dang, there was another violent collision. At the same time that it blocked Yang Wenjiao's body, the surrounding iron thorns also surrounded Yang Wenjiao at an astonishing speed from all directions. From the looks of it, this summoner actually had the upper hand. The female summoner's incantation did not stop. In front of her, pod-like plants gradually grew. The pods were very large, even larger than the previous plant with thorns on its top. It was unknown how they locked onto Yang Wenjiao, but they slowly bent down until they were parallel to the ground. They suddenly swung up. From each pod, 3 green beans the size of a human head were thrown out. They were actually thrown at Yang Wenjiao like catapults. Chapter 41. This works too? There were a total of 4 of these pod-like plants. This time, 12 green beans were smashed out. Moreover, a yellow plant quickly grew out of the female summoner's body. This thing was a little strange and looked like coral. The moment it grew, waves of yellow mist permeated the air. This mist didn't have any direct attack power, but any plant that came into contact with it grew crazily, as if it had taken stimulants and attacked crazily. Poof, 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 poof. A series of strange sounds rang out. Yang Wenjiao naturally wouldn't be hit by those beans. However, juice splattered out from every bean that he pierced. His defense wasn't impervious to water after all, and his body was instantly stained quite a bit. This green liquid carried the fragrance of plants. It wasn't poisonous, but it was extremely sticky. After coming into contact with some of it, Yang Wenjiao instantly felt his movements become much slower. In almost all the previous matches, it was only Yang Wenjiao who suppressed others. When had he ever been suppressed by others? Not only was this feeling foreign to him, but it was also extremely unpleasant. On the rostrum, Han Qiu looked at Spirit Emperor San Shui, who was sitting not far away from him. He said in surprise, "This lady isn't bad. Her summoning speed is actually so fast. The magic staff in her hand shouldn't be an ordinary item." San Shui snorted and said, "Don't find excuses after losing. Xiao Mo has a strong natural affinity with plants. It's said that she has some elf blood in her. No matter how good a magic staff is, it depends on the person using it." Lose? I'm afraid that's going to be very difficult. Han Qiu smiled and shook his head. Although this girl isn't bad, it's impossible for her to win this match. Wen Zhao is the best candidate for our Knights Templars to fight for first place. Holy Magus Lin Chun, who was sitting beside San Shui, suddenly poked his head out and said, "I remember that not long ago, there was a contestant from your Knights Templars who was seriously injured by an assassination attempt. It can't be him, right?" San Shui instantly smiled. She smiled very happily. Han Qiu said with a face full of embarrassment and anger, "Little Lin, you want to slap my face? Fine, just you wait." Lin Chen laughed heartily and said, "I'm so scared." Ing Sui Feng sat at the side and said indifferently, "Even if Yang Wenjiao was injured, it was because of our assassin temple. What's there to laugh about? I'm afraid we won't see anyone from your magic temple in the top 4 this year." The 6 temples had 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. There was some competition between them. There were 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. The contestants didn't expect these big shots to bicker. Yang Wenjiao, who was in the middle of the arena, exploded. The plant summoner in front of him was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. The surrounding plants suddenly became crazy, and there were red spikes that would sneak up on him at any time. Coupled with the sticky green liquid on his body, Yang Wenjiao was a little enraged. An intense golden light instantly rose from Yang Wenjiao's body. At this moment, his internal spiritual energy was not only radiating outwards, but also in the shape of a flame. The blazing golden light exploded from his body. The green liquid that limited his speed disappeared in an instant. All the surrounding thorns that entered the range of the flames were burned to ashes. Fire of light? Long Haochen was shocked. This skill was recorded in the inheritance ring his father had left him. However, he hadn't practiced it yet. According to his father's notes, this skill required at least rank 5 level 2 or above to use. Light and fire were inseparable. The fire of sun was even more scorching. It was a pure flame of light. Its temperature was extremely high. Using one's own liquid spiritual energy as fuel, the The fire of light had the ability to burn all darkness and corrode. It was very useful for the punishment knight. This skill was also a secret skill. Moreover, it was a must-learn skill for all rank 5 punishment knight. This skill was very powerful. It could attack, defend, and dispel negative effects. However, behind its great power, its consumption was also very high. Activating this skill required 200 liquid spiritual energy. Every breath of time consumed 30 spiritual energy. Even a rank 5 knight would not be able to use it for long. Without a doubt, fire was the most destructive to plants. Although the iron thorns were stimulated by the yellow mist, they could only wither in front of the fire of light. Yang Wenjiao let out a long roar. His toes touched the ground, and he attacked again. The blazing flames of light incinerated all the plants that were close to him. The only thing he needed to do was to block the red spikes that were still hurtling towards him. Moreover, with the fire of light burning, the power of the thorns was greatly reduced. The female summoner hiding in the bushes panicked. Since she could accurately hit Yang Wenjiao's position, she could naturally feel the speed of his attack. She spat out a series of rapid incantations. She pointed the staff in her hand at the ground. Instantly, 2 cherry-like fiery red plants grew rapidly. Her body suddenly moved horizontally at a high speed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there was an extra vine around her waist. The origin of the vine was from the side of the summoning spell that she had released earlier. At this moment, the vine pulled her body horizontally. The iron thorns naturally made way for her. Her speed was even faster than Yang Wenjiao's attack. The moment she moved horizontally, Yang Wenjiao had already arrived at her previous position. With a glance, he saw the plants that were still spraying thorns and the bean pods. Where is she? Yang Wenjiao was slightly stunned, but his hands did not slow down. His 2 heavy swords swept toward the plants in front of him with a blazing fire of light. Although the power of these plants was great, their defense was much weaker. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Yang Wenjiao's plan was very clear. His opponent was only a rank 4 summoner. Her spiritual energy was limited, and it was not liquid spiritual energy. As long as he destroyed as many of her summoned creatures as possible, she would also lose the ability to fight against him. Just as he was clearing away the attacking plants, 2 large red fruits appeared in his sight. These 2 red fruits had expanded to the size of pumpkins, and they were still expanding at an alarming rate. A sense of danger quietly crept over him. While Yang Wenjiao retreated rapidly, he swung his swords. The 2 light swords formed a cross and slashed towards the red fruits. Sigh. Sometimes, some people are just more infuriating. If it was Long Haochen, perhaps he would not have used these 2 swords. Because he had already sensed the danger, the best thing to do was to stay away. But Yang Wenjiao was a pure punishment knight. His attacks had long penetrated into his bones. So he was in for a tragedy. Boom. The huge roar caused the entire knight's trial field to tremble violently. Everyone was stunned to see a mushroom cloud erupt and rise from the center of the iron thorns. The female summoner, who had already hidden far away, subconsciously took off the cloak on her head, revealing a pretty face that was both angry and happy. She stuck out her tongue and said, "The power of this violent cherry is really not small. It won't kill him, right?" In the distant rostrum, Han Q suddenly stood up. Not only him, but all the big shots watching the battle also followed suit and stood up, because they all knew what Yang Wenjiao's true identity was. Previously, when he was stabbed by the Assassin Temple, it had already caused the Knights Templars to flare up. If something really happened to him, perhaps Sanshui, Han Q shouted angrily. Sanshui Popo's facial muscles twitched. "I really don't know about this. When did this girl summon this kind of thing? I didn't teach her." Cough, 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 cough. A series of coughs came from the field. An extremely sorry figure drilled out from the iron thorns. His appearance really made people unable to restrain themselves from laughing. His originally beautiful armor was now scorched black. His helmet was also blown away. His hair was burnt and curled by the explosion. The armor on his arms and body were damaged in many places, faintly revealing bloodstains. His face was even more black and red. Looking at his appearance, he simply looked like a destitute beggar. I. Yang Wenjiao's current gloominess was simply indescribable with words. If he hadn't slashed with his sword, the violent cherry that could only explode on the spot might not have been able to hurt him. However, his slash was equivalent to directly detonating it. Although he was already retreating, the explosive power of the violent cherry was indeed very strong. Fortunately, his body was still burning with the flames of light, and he still had time to use all his strength to brandish his two swords to protect his vitals. Otherwise, this violent explosion would probably have seriously injured him. However, even so, at this moment, there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. Looking at the girl in front of him, his eyes were filled with anger. Golden light appeared again, and a holy light barrier rose up. It wasn't that Punishment Knight didn't know any healing or support skills. Holy light barrier was an essential healing skill for every knight. His two swords once again emitted a dazzling golden light. Yang Wenjiao fiercely stared at the female summoner who revealed her appearance not far away, and rushed towards her with large strides. All right, you can still fight. Then I admit defeat, Bai Xiaoma said somewhat helplessly. Just as Yang Wenjiao expected, her cultivation was after all only at the 4th rank. In the previous series of continuous magic, her spiritual power had already been consumed by more than half. It was no longer possible to set up like before. Since that was the case, he might as well admit defeat. His charging footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Yang Wenjiao only felt as if there was a lump of air in his chest. Was this considered a win? Had he ever seen someone who won in such a sorry state like him? His face was full of grief and indignation, and he thought to himself, I'm simply the spokesperson for the word sadness. Can you not be like this? However, the other party had already admitted defeat, and he couldn't just rush over and continue to attack. He was very regretful that he didn't summon his mount. Yang Wenjiao secretly swore that he wouldn't pretend anymore in the following matches, and he would definitely summon his mount and go all out. Looking at his charred body, his heart was the same as the previous Han Q Holy Knight. It was bleeding. Yang Wenjiao versus Bai Xiaoma. Yang Wenjiao wins, enters the top 8. The referee's announcement rang out, and at the same time, this first match ended. Even though the female summoner, Bai Xiaoma, had lost, her strange fighting style had left a deep impression on everyone present. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Bai Xiaoma's plant summoning had extremely strong control ability. If one could have such a teammate, whether it was a group battle or a solo battle, it would be the best helper. Moreover, she was only at the 4th rank. She was already able to make Yang Wenjiao, who was at the 5th rank, in such a sorry state. What would happen after she entered the 5th rank? It was still unknown to how strong she would become. It was merely the first match of the top 16, and it had already shocked all the spectating contestants. Those contestants who weren't able to advance also felt a lot less unconvinced in their hearts. However, the following second match made them a little disappointed. In the second match, it was Lin Xin and Long Haochen, the brother and sister pair. They didn't even fight at all. As soon as they got on the stage, Lin Xin admitted defeat to the referee. This kind of situation was quite rare in the top 16 of the Monster Hunters preliminaries. After all, it was very difficult to get to this stage. With every step forward, it could be said that the status of the Monster Hunters in the Alliance would increase. Even if they thought that their strength was inferior to their opponent, most of them would still choose to fight. However, there was no rule that forbade one from admitting defeat, so the referee could only announce that Long Haochen won and entered the top 8. With regards to Lin Xion's admission of defeat, Han Q was quite satisfied. At least she didn't exhaust Long Haochen's strength. The following matches were still carried out every day. If one exhausted too much in the previous match, it would obviously affect the following matches. Lin Xion's admission of defeat in the second match didn't affect the excitement of today's match. The next 4 matches were all exciting, and they wouldn't admit defeat until the last moment. The winning side also had to pay a certain price. After all, the strength of the contestants who could get to this stage was not too far apart. Kaier, it's your turn. Long Houchin held Kai-er's hand nervously. Kai nodded lightly and said in a low voice, "I'll be fine." Long Houchin wanted to send her to the arena, but Kai refused. She held the green bamboo cane in her hand and slowly walked to the arena alone. Seeing the blind Kai enter the arena, the spectating contestants had different feelings. Basically, they were divided into two completely opposite groups. One group was naturally full of doubts. How could a blind girl enter the top 16? The other group was nervous and excited at the same time, because they had all witnessed Kai-er's strength. The assassins from the Assassin Temple, in particular, even cheered. With her tyrannical performance in the preliminary round, Kai-er had already won everyone's recognition. Walking slowly into the arena, Kai-er slowly stood still. Her opponent had never met her in the competition before, so there was a hint of doubt and confusion in his eyes. This girl is from the Assassin Temple? Kai-er's opponent was a young man in his 20s. He had a medium build and held a red magic cane in his hand. He was the other grade 4 summoner from the Soul Temple who entered the top 16. In the previous competition, the Soul Temple's performance was remarkable. Although Bai Xiaomao failed to advance, she made Yang Wenjiao, who had a high chance of reaching the top of this year's competition, embarrassed. The other level 5 beast tamer, on the other hand, easily entered the top 8. The person in front of him was the last disciple of the Soul Temple to fight today. Assassin Temple Kai vs Soul Temple Fangzhou. Due to the difference in their professions, the two sides were 40 meters apart. 4 pillars rose from the arena. Both sides, get ready. Following the referee's announcement, 4 thick pillars slowly rose from the ground. Kai-er and the summoner called Fangzhou also slowly retreated until there was a distance of 40 meters between them. At this moment, no one was more nervous than Long Houchin, who was in the resting area. He nervously observed the situation in the arena and wished that he could rush up and replace Kai-er. Lin Xan looked at him and couldn't help but smile. "Silly boy, don't be so nervous. Don't worry, nothing will happen. I've seen Kai-er's strength. I'm afraid that even you might not be able to defeat her. You just wait and see." "Okay," Long Houchin replied, but in fact, he didn't even hear Lin Xan's words. No matter what others said, the anxiety in his heart wouldn't lessen at all. He just kept thinking Kai-er can't see, and she's so weak, what if she gets hurt? Long Houchin had already thought it through. If Kai-er was hurt by the opponent, even if it was against the rules of the competition, he would immediately rush in to heal her. Silently, he had already started to prepare the holy light barrier. Match start. Following the referee's announcement, the 7th round of the 16-8 competition officially began. Although Fangzhou had never seen Kai-er before, he didn't look down on his opponent just because she was a blind girl. To be able to reach this stage with a cultivation of the 4th stage, it wasn't as simple as just strength. It was also firm and cautious. He pointed the reddish-brown staff in his hand forward, and the clear cry of a bird rang out. A large azure bird that was about a meter in length soared through the air. This was a summoning without any incantation. It seemed that this summoning magic was stored in his staff. Just from this, it could be seen that his staff was at least a spirit demon equipment. The green bird soared into the sky and flew quickly in the direction of Kai-er. A faint green light also shone from its body. The moment the referee announced the start of the match, Kai-er held the green bamboo staff and walked in the direction of her opponent. Her speed wasn't fast, it was no different from walking normally. The green bamboo staff lightly tapped on the ground as she walked slowly. Her aura was completely restrained. It looked like an ordinary blind girl taking a stroll. The green bamboo staff didn't make a sound when it tapped on the yellow ground. It only left a simple dent. After Fangzhou released the green bird, he had already started chanting an incantation in a hurried voice. The incantation of a summoner was different from that of a magician. The speed of their incantations was usually faster. It required frequency and not the rhythm of a magician. The deep and powerful incantation sounded urgently, and the brownish-red staff in his hand became brighter and brighter. A strong, beast-like aura spread out from the staff. Kai-er Had only walked 10 meters when the green bird was already above her head. In an instant, it swooped down in the direction of Kai. It spread its wings, and with an ear-piercing whistle, 2-meter-wide wind blades slashed straight at Kai. It didn't stop moving forward. She still walked slowly. Long Houchen, who was in the resting area, almost cried out in surprise. Just as the two wind blades were about to hit Kai's body, something strange happened. It didn't seem to have done anything, but in that instant, her body became illusory. Immediately afterwards, those two wind blades unexpectedly passed through her body, and with two puff sounds, they smashed into the ground behind her, leaving behind two deep depressions. At this moment, the green bamboo staff in Kai's hand rose up like lightning. A cold and sharp killing intent flashed and disappeared. The green bird's body wasn't very big. The moment Kai made her move, it already felt the danger. It quickly flapped its wings and made a dexterous, evasive move. However, the green bamboo staff that Kai raised instantly burst out with 3 rays of light. The length of the light was actually more than 30 feet. Poof! The green bamboo staff touched the ground. Kai was still walking forward slowly. The distance between her and the summoner was getting closer. Her aura didn't change because of the green bird's attack. It was as if everything was just an illusion. But was it really an illusion? The green bird that was evenly divided into 8 pieces fell to the ground with its own blood, splashing up a cloud of dust. It didn't even have a chance to dodge the green bamboo staff that Kai had just raised. Long Houchen exclaimed when he saw the wind blade hit Kai. His voice stopped in his throat. 20 meters away from Kai, Feng Zhu, who was in the middle of rapidly chanting an incantation, suddenly had his pupils shrink to the size of a needle. His hurried incantation was almost interrupted by the scene that just happened. The storm bird was killed in a second. That was a real 4th-level magical beast. Even if it couldn't hurt the enemy, it could at least disturb them, right? However, from the beginning to the end, it didn't have the slightest effect on the advancing figure of Kai. The light from the green bamboo staff was even neater than the chef's cutting. What caused Feng Zhu's back to be instantly covered in cold sweat was that instant of extremely sharp, killing intent. At this moment, he had already realized what kind of opponent he was facing, even if she couldn't see. But her tyrannical strength still made Feng Zhu feel an unprecedented and terrifying pressure. Kai's speed was still very slow, but just like in the preliminary round, with every step she took, Feng Zhu's mental pressure increased a little. However, this Feng Zhu was indeed outstanding. Under such circumstances, he still managed to complete his incantation. He pointed his staff forward, and a brownish-red light shot out, turning into a door of light. Immediately after, a loud roar sounded, and a huge, sturdy figure drilled out from the door of light. 6th-level magical beast, giant adamantine bear. For a 4th-level summoner, being able to summon a 6th-level magical beast was already a summon of a higher level. This was closely related to his own spiritual energy and equipment. But even so, after completing this summon, Feng Zhu's face still became pale. But it was a pale expression of relief. Without a doubt, the best way to deal with an assassin was to have a strong defense and an unbeatable strength. Feng Zhu's choice could be said to be very correct. The giant adamantine bear stretched out its paws, picking up Feng Zhu's body and placing him on its shoulder. Then it stood up straight. This fellow's body was extremely sturdy. When it stood up, it was close to 4 meters tall, and its majestic body was like a small mountain. It was a stark contrast to Kai, who was slowly walking towards it. As a 6th-level magical beast, the giant adamantine bear only had one innate skill, earthen roar. It could create an indiscriminate attack on the ground like an earthquake. Its greatest characteristic was that its skin was coarse, and its flesh was thick, and its defense and strength were extremely high. With huge strides, it charged towards Kai. Feng Zhu's staff flashed again, and a gentle yellow light enveloped him and the giant adamantine bear, making it seem as if his body was glued to the giant adamantine bear's shoulder. No matter how the giant adamantine bear moved, it wouldn't shake him off. At this moment, Kair is suddenly moved. As the saying goes, quiet as a virgin, quick as a rabbit. The instant Kair moved, her speed was so fast that she left behind a trail of afterimages. Originally, she was only 10 meters away from the giant adamantine bear. In a flash, she appeared in front of the giant adamantine bear. Under Feng Zhu's control, the giant adamantine bear instantly stomped its foot on the ground. With a loud rumble, the earthen roar activated, and a yellow earthquake erupted in all directions. However, Kair once again showed everyone her tyrannical strength. She didn't dodge, she didn't jump, and she didn't retreat. She raised the green bamboo staff in her hand and made a slashing motion. A dark shadow flashed, and a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. That omnidirectional earthquake actually split open in front of Kair, as if it had been cut open by a sharp blade. It didn't affect her forward momentum at all. In the next moment, Feng Zhu couldn't see Kair's figure anymore. The competitors who were resting could only vaguely see two streaks of dark gold light flash by. Immediately after, the giant adamantine bear, with its astonishing defensive power, actually fell to the ground with a thud, as if a mountain of gold had been pushed down or a jade pillar toppled over. It even let out a mournful howl. 2 arrows of blood shot out from the joints behind his knees. Then, a quiet figure floated up from behind like a wisp of smoke. She placed one foot on the giant adamantine bear's head, the end of the green bamboo staff pressed against the artery in Feng Zhu's neck. No one doubted that she only needed a light movement to instantly end Feng Zhu's life. Dumbfounded, Feng Zhu was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that he would be defeated so easily. The level 6 giant adamantine bear didn't even have the chance to fight her head-on. The giant adamantine bear unwillingly swung its paw at the top of its head. In response, Kair only lightly trembled at the tip of her foot. In that instant, everyone could only see Kair's body light up with a dark golden radiance, and the giant adamantine bear's body instantly stagnated. That pair of thick bear paws drooped down powerlessly, and blood crazily spurted from its nose and mouth. It seemed to have suffered a heavy injury. I admit defeat. Feng Zhu dejectedly put down the staff in his hand. He had lost, and lost miserably. From start to finish, he didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. On the platform, Spirit Emperor San Shui said in a daze, "What kind of spirit power is that? Why is it dark gold?" Ing Suifeng glanced at her, smiled faintly, and said, "I don't know either." Floating down, Kair didn't even say a word. Her green bamboo staff touched the ground, and she slowly walked towards the resting area. Kair wins. The referee swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty. This battle looked simple and straightforward. In front of Kair, both Feng Zhu and his summoned beast seemed so clumsy. The resting area fell into a momentary silence. Almost everyone felt their necks tighten. As they watched Kair slowly walk back to the resting area, the young geniuses participating in the competition all felt their breathing become heavy. Speed, attack power, as well as that cold and sharp killing intent, all of them brought them immense pressure. Even though they didn't participate in the battle just now, it was hard for them to calm down at this moment. Too powerful. The Assassin Temple actually had such a powerful existence. Yang Wenjiao's neck also tightened, and his chest seemed to ache faintly again. He was already beginning to wonder if he could fight against this lady, even if he rode on a mount. Kair used her actions to show everyone the elegance of an assassin. Long Haochen blankly watched as Kair returned to his side and slowly sat down. Although he didn't feel his neck tighten, the way he looked at Kair had changed a lot. He slowly lowered his head and didn't look at her again. He was silently thinking about something. The soft and tender little hand quietly drilled into his palm. Kair didn't say anything, but her nimble index finger moved a few times in his palm. Long Haochen's originally somewhat gloomy heartstrings were immediately plucked and rippled. She was writing, "What's wrong with you?" The itchy feeling brought these 4 words. It was a little strange, but it also made Long Haochen's mood a little better. Long Haochen pulled her little hand and said in her white and tender palm, "You're so powerful. Do you still need my protection? Kai's palm trembled slightly. She flipped her hand and wrote in his palm. Do you regret it? No, Long Houchin blurted out. He pulled her hand and wrote in a serious tone. I will never regret it. Kai was silent. She held his hand tightly. After a long while, she wrote again on his palm. You're not only protecting me, but also my heart. Long Houchin's heart trembled. He repeated the words she wrote in his heart. You're not only protecting me, but also my heart. In an instant, he only felt as if a layer of his heart had been pierced, and his state of mind suddenly became clear. That's right. I want to protect her. What does it have to do with her own strength or weakness? What I want to do is to protect her. Don't tell me I won't do it just because she's strong. It just silently held his hand. After a little hesitation, she slowly leaned her head on his shoulder. At the moment of contact, both of their hearts gently trembled. Long Houchin clearly felt that Kai's hand became hot. Lin Xin sat on the other side of Long Houchin. She had been paying attention to their movements. When Kai leaned on Long Houchin's shoulder, she seemed to have heard the sound of eyeballs falling to the ground behind her. After all, the contestants who entered the top 16 were sitting in the first row. Almost everyone could see what was happening in front of them. At this time, no one was even paying attention to the ongoing 8th match. Everyone's eyes were focused on Long Houchin and Kai. Is that the powerful female assassin who defeated her opponent in an instant just now? She's actually so helpless? Looking at Kai, leaning on Long Houchin's shoulder, many people's impression of her as the cold and unparalleled queen of assassins was subverted. The top 16 matches ended. Although the lot that Knights Templars drew wasn't very good, 3 of them still entered the top 8. 2 from Assassin Temple, 1 each from Magic Temple, Summoning Temple, and Warrior Temple. Tomorrow, it would be an even more intense battle for the top 8. Moreover, tomorrow's lot drawing was still random. There was also no restriction of today's group ranking. The battle between the strong would definitely take place. This time, Long Houchin and Kai didn't leave early. Instead, they were the last to leave. Lin Xin didn't disturb them and quietly left. I want to treat you to a meal, can I? Long Houchin whispered to Kai, who was leaning on him. His body was a little stiff. He also wanted to try to hug her waist and feel that alluring curve and slender elasticity again, but he didn't dare to. Kai slowly raised her head and sat up straight. Her face hidden under the veil was frighteningly hot. She lightly shook her head. No need. Go back early. The next matches are very important. You have to maintain your condition. Oh, slightly disappointed, Long Houchin agreed. Kai's delicate ears moved slightly. She murmured in a very soft voice, there's still time in the future. Long Houchin always had sharp ears. Hearing this, he immediately turned around and looked straight into her eyes. Kai looked up at him with some doubt. What's wrong? Long Houchin swallowed a mouthful of saliva and plucked up his courage. What I want to say is if I get to first place, can you let me hug you? Kai's voice instantly rose an octave. Long Houchin was so scared that he stood up and waved his hand. I'm sorry, I just like you too much. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Don't be angry. Although Kai couldn't see, she could clearly feel his fear and trepidation. She chuckled and gently nodded to him. Standing up, she touched the ground with her green bamboo cane. She jumped up and flew away gracefully. Kai, slow down. Long Houchin was afraid that she would fall because she couldn't see him, so he hurriedly chased after her. On the rostrum, in a dark corner, Han Q waved his fist forcefully. Good job. You're not old, but your ability is not small. Shadow, did you see that? Just now, that little girl was snuggling up to him. Wah, it seems that this matter is done. Snuggle your sister, Ing Sui Feng said somewhat gloomily. This development is indeed a bit too fast. Han Q patted Ing Sui Feng's shoulder with a smile. Brother, thank you. Thank you, Assassin Temple, for nurturing such an outstanding talent. I'm very comforted, but I'm very uncomfortable in my heart. Little Han, you've been stuck at the bottleneck of the 8th rank for many years. I'll help you stimulate your potential. I believe Old Man Young won't have any objections. Chapter 42. A somewhat distorted figure gradually became clear in front of Han Q. If Long Houchen was here, he would definitely recognize this thin, old man who seemed to have walked out of the void. It was the one in front of the Heavenly Saint Union's treasury. Han Q's expression immediately changed, and he said with a bitter face, "Senior Sheng, I was wrong. Don't stoop to my level, and stoop to my level." The thin old man coldly snorted, "Less nonsense. Come with me to the assassin's trial field. If you don't want to go, I'll go find your disciple and bring him there." Han Q let out a long sigh and looked like he was going to die for justice. I'll go, okay? You have to be lenient." The thin old man stepped into the void and instantly disappeared, leaving only his cold snort in the air. Han Q looked at Ing Sui Feng, and Ing Sui Feng helplessly said, "Next time, watch your stupid mouth. Brother will pray for you." Han Q said with a sad face, "Senior Sheng is already so old, but his temper is still like a raging fire. Brother, I'm going." In the end, Long Houchen couldn't catch up to Kai and could only helplessly walk back to his residence. As he walked, he suddenly realized something. His beautiful big eyes slightly widened. Kai last, and could it be that she agreed to my request? She's willing to let me hug her? Yes, it must be. I'm too stupid to think of it at this time. If it wasn't like this, why would Kai run away? Long Houchen only felt a raging flame rise from within his body in an instant, his heart burning hot. His left hand moved, and he couldn't help but recall the wonderful feeling he had when he held Kai-Er's slender waist that day. I must go back and continue to cultivate. I must get first place. This strong belief made the young man full of motivation, and he took large strides back to his residence. On the side of the street, in an inconspicuous corner, Kai-Er listened to the change in his footsteps. Her pretty face blushed, and her mouth curved into a charming smile. On the second day of the elimination round, the atmosphere became even more intense. Today, the quarterfinals would be held. Whoever won today would have a 75% chance of obtaining a spiritual stove. Without a doubt, every participant would give their all in today's competition. Long Houchen and Lin Xin arrived at the Knight's training field early in the morning. Kai was still sitting at the same place as yesterday. Long Houchen leaned over and quietly held her hand. She only slightly lowered her head and did not say anything. Because Lin Xin admitted defeat yesterday, she had been eliminated. She could only sit in the rest area at the back. Long Houchen especially liked this kind of touching atmosphere that only the two of them could feel. He just held her hand with a satisfied smile on his face. 8-4, the drawing of lots will begin. The top 8 contestants, please enter the arena. Long Houchen pulled Kai to stand up. To his surprise, this time, Kai did not pull her hand back. Instead, she held his hand, and just like that, they walked into the arena. Kai was a smart and opinionated girl. When she leaned on Long Houchen's shoulder yesterday, she was no longer afraid of others talking about her. At that moment, she also completely faced up to her relationship with Long Houchen. The other 6 contestants looked at the young couple, and their expressions more or less changed. Some of them had experienced Long Houchen's strength, while others did not know. However, everyone had seen the tyrannical strength that Kai had displayed yesterday. Soon, the top 8 contestants arrived at the center of the arena. The method of drawing lots was no different from the day before. It was just that there were fewer people. Long Houchen was a little surprised to find that his grandmaster's complexion was a little ugly today. More accurately, it was an unhealthy paleness. His eyes were lifeless, and his facial muscles twitched from time to time. He did not know what was going on. The drawing of lots begins. Han Q said weakly. He sighed inwardly. This old man is already so old, and yet he still got beaten up. This is too pitiful. Long Houchen held Kai-Er's hand as he raised his other hand and pressed it against the halo. At the same time, he also raised his head and looked at the other contestants. Of the other 6 contestants in the top 8, he only knew 2 of them, Yang Wenjiao and Huang Yi. Of the remaining 4, only the 5th Order Knight. Long Houchen had a slight impression of him. Rays of golden light flashed, and the drawing of lots was completed in an instant. In the process of drawing lots, Long Houchen's gaze was always on Kai. Naturally, the one he didn't want to draw the most was her. It seemed that his luck was not bad. The two of them had different shades of gold. Obviously, they would not meet each other today. Long Houchen then raised his head and looked at the others. The situation of the top 8 had already been decided. As the saying goes, some people are happy, some people are sad. The most depressed one was Huang Yi, because his opponent in the top 8 was Kai. When he saw that Kai Er's golden light was the same as his, Huang Yi only felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He knew that his path forward was most likely over. He was in good mood. Huang Yi also knew that among the contestants today, no matter who he faced, his chances of winning would not be too high. It was just that the opponent he drew was the one he had the least chance of winning. Long Houchen also saw his opponent. Today, he had to face the 5th Order Beast Tamer from the Soul Temple. Obviously, the difficulty he had to face was not small. The Knights Templars once again showed their unlucky side. Yang Wenjiao and another 5th Order Knight were drawn in the same group. In the end, he could not avoid another battle with a knight. However, Yang Wenjiao's expression was very relaxed. Instead, he felt that his luck was very good. At least he did not encounter Kai. The last pair was naturally the Assassin Temple's other 4th Order Peak Assassin against the Warrior Temple's only advanced. Both of them were happy. Without a doubt, among the top 8 contestants, they were the weakest, followed by Huang Yi. If they went all out, they would have a chance to enter the top 4. Han Q's facial muscles twitched even more violently. His luck was too bad. He drew on his own again. However, today, no one came to make fun of him. Today's battle was very important to the 6 great temples. Whether or not they could enter the top 4 depended on this battle. Entering the top 4 was equivalent to having 1 foot in the top 3. This was not only a spiritual stove, but also a symbol of glory for the 6 great temples. Ying Sui Feng was slightly better. He had absolute confidence in Kai Er. Besides, the Assassin Temple already had 2 people in the top 8. Their chances were higher. Other than the Knot Temple, the Vice Temple Masters of the other 3 temples all stared at their own disciples, using their eyes to convey something. The one with the lightest color stays. The others return to the resting area and wait for the next match. Han Q said weakly. Long Houchen's eyes lit up. Today, the ones with the lightest golden light were him and the Beast Tamer. Kai Er, your opponent is Huang Yi, an Earth Element Mage, 5th Order. He has an Earth Element Spirit, and is good at using Earth Wave to help him change his position. You will fight in the 4th match. I will fight in the 1st match. Go back and rest first. He would not repeat yesterday's mistake. Not only did he tell her about Kai Er's opponent, he also told her about Huang Yi's characteristics. Long Houchen did not conceal his voice. Huang Yi's expression immediately became even more bitter. The sacred magus from the Magic Temple, Lin Shun, also felt bitter. He looked at Kai Er, then at Huang Yi, his face filled with helplessness. The others slowly retreated, leaving only Long Houchen and the Beast Tamer. The referee had already entered the arena. The protective barrier outside the arena slowly rose. Knights Templars, Long Houchen, versus Soul Temple's Liao Yu. Pull apart the distance of 50 meters. Long Houchen slowly retreated, carefully observing his opponent at the same time. Liao Yu was a slender young man. His height was about the same as the 14-year-old Long Houchen. He was definitely over 20 years old. His appearance was above average, and his face was slightly pale. However, he had a pair of exceptionally bright eyes. The light in his eyes was like a mirror. As he slowly retreated, he kept staring at Long Houchen. The distance between the two gradually increased, but the aura between them was already in conflict. Liao Yu held a white magic staff in his hand. This kind of color was very rare. It is hard to tell what material it was made of. The gem embedded at the top was also white. It was as white as jade and as translucent as snow. The gem was hexagonal in shape and emitted a faint chill. The match begins. The moment the distance of 50 meters was reached, the referee announced loudly. At the same time, his figure flashed, and he quickly retreated, leaving the arena to the two. Liao Yu was already prepared. The moment the match began, his incantation burst forth like a gush. At the same time, a layer of white halo was emitted from his body. It felt like his incantation was not as fast as by Xiaomao and Fangzhu. However, his enunciation was clearer, and there seemed to be a strange rhythm to it. What was even more peculiar was that, along with the incantation, the magic staff in his hand was also waving nonstop. With a similar rhythm, one after another, strange milky white runes quickly formed in front of him. In just 3 seconds, in front of him, there was already a huge white door of light, and a magical beast leaped out like lightning. It was a snow-white leopard with some dark blue-gold coin-shaped stripes. Its body was only about 2 meters long, and it did not look very strong. However, it gave people a feeling of a combination of strength and beauty. Liao Yu took a step forward, and the white halo on his body instantly fused with the snow leopard. In the next moment, he had already appeared on the back of the snow leopard. The snow shadow leopard was as fast as lightning, as fast as the wind, and specialized in ice magic. Different snow shadow leopards had different innate magic. It was one of the few magical beasts of the 5th level that specialized in speed. When he saw the magical beast that the opponent had summoned, Long Haochen immediately made a judgment. His father and teacher had taught him to recognize the majority of magical beasts, and the snow shadow leopard was naturally one of them. Without a doubt, Liao Yu did not want to use the snow shadow leopard to attack him, but to use it as a mount, relying on the speed of the snow shadow leopard to contend with him. When Liao Yu was summoning, Long Haochen did not charge at him. On his forehead, the purple rune turned into a ray of deep purple light that shone on the ground in front of him. 9 purple lines of light flashed and disappeared. Hao Yue's huge figure had already appeared in front of him. In terms of summoning speed, it was indeed faster than Liao Yu. Mount? He had a mount? Yang Wenjiao, who was sitting in the first row of the resting area, was shocked. He could not help but stare at Hao Yue in front of Long Haochen. The current Hao Yue was no longer the pitiful ground fire lizard that Long Haochen had summoned. Its 4-meter-long body was comparable to that of a ground dragon. Although it was not as tall as a ground dragon, its strong and powerful limbs and broad back all gave people a heavy and solid feeling. Its 3 heads were raised up high, and the spikes on its back that extended down from its head faintly glowed with a purple halo. The 2 bone protrusions on its back that were getting bigger were like the back of a knight. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes shone brightly. At first glance, it looked rather ferocious with its 3 heads, but after a few more glances, one could feel a biting, cold majesty from its body. It was absolutely domineering. Long Haochen's figure flashed, and he had already landed on Hao Yue's back. A strange scene appeared. The spikes on Hao Yue's back actually separated on their own, and contained his body within. The protrusions on its back protruded slightly forward, supporting his body. The spikes closed inwards, firmly holding his body in place. 1 man and 1 beast were actually in perfect harmony. Before stepping into the trial field, Long Haochen was already fully equipped. The silver Holy Spirit armor glowed faintly, and his face was hidden within the helmet. At this moment, the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield were already in his hands. The Holy Spirit set was complete. A faint silver halo was released from his body, enveloping himself and Hao Yue, causing their bodies to be covered in a layer of faint silver light. This was the skill that came with the set, Holy Spirit's protection. In terms of appearance alone, Long Haochen, who was clad in silver armor, a silver sword, and a silver shield, and riding on 3 Hao Yue heads, was much more tyrannical than Liao Yu, who was opposite him. Hao Yue's 3 heads let out a roar at the same time, and its 4 claws swung out, brazenly charging in the direction of its opponent. Each of its 3 heads shone with a different light. Long Haochen sat on its back, appearing extremely calm. A layer of golden mist rose from his body in a ring shape, accumulating power. That's right. Sitting on Hao Yue's back, he did not need to move at all, and using the accumulating power skill was just right. If it could be said that all the competitions that Long Haochen had participated in before were to hone his strength, increase his combat experience, and stimulate his own potential. Then, from today onwards, he would be fighting solely for the sake of victory. There was only one reason, and that was for Kair. In the resting area, Yang Wenjiao's expression had already become solemn. He had fought a great battle with Long Haochen before, and he had won in that battle. Moreover, he had won while holding back. However, at this moment, when he looked at Long Haochen again, he suddenly realized that this youth, who was much younger than him, seemed to have changed into a different person. Fifth rank mount. His original advantage had been rapidly reduced. In less than a month's time, he had undergone earth-shattering changes. Yang Wenjiao was not surprised by the strength that he had displayed, but more surprised by the speed at which he had improved. Roar, roar, roar. Haoyue's three heads roared angrily again, and three different colored lights shone at the same time. The battle was about to begin. Chapter 43. Long Haochen rode on Haoyue and charged towards Liaoyu. Liaoyu's snow shadow leopard also moved. He was only a summoner. Once the knight got close to him, it would mean his defeat. Liaoyu's surprise was no less than Yang Wenjiao's. As a summoner, he was confident that no one in the same level as him would be more familiar with magical beasts. However, he did not recognize Long Haochen's mount. What was this magical beast with three heads that looked like an earth dragon? Especially when he saw Haoyue's three heads glowing with different colors, his expression changed. Three attributes? Magic had elements that countered each other, and Haoyue, who had three attributes, could be said to not be countered by any element. The snow shadow leopard's speed was astonishing. When it moved at full speed, it was like a bolt of white lightning skimming to the side. Liaoyu did not stop chanting and kept chanting rapidly. At the same time, he took out a necklace from somewhere and wore it around his neck. The necklace was silver, and there was a pink gemstone the size of a pigeon's egg hanging from it. This kind of color pendant was more suitable for girls. It was strange for a young man like Liaoyu to wear it. However, he could not care less. Whether it was Long Haochen, who was charging, or Haoyue, who was glowing with three colors, they both gave him great pressure. Haoyue's speed was obviously slower than the snow shadow leopard's, but it was very smart. It did not have any intention of catching up to the snow shadow leopard, and only followed it from a distance. It did not take the initiative to release its magic either. The knight's trial field was 300 meters in diameter. Even though Haoyue was pressuring the snow shadow leopard in the center of the field, the distance between them was always maintained at more than 100 meters. With Haoyue's current level of magic, it was impossible for him to attack his opponent at such a distance. Liaoyu's chanting did not stop, and he maintained a high frequency of chanting that echoed throughout the field. The pink gemstone on the necklace began to emit a layer of pink light, which combined with the light emitted by the white staff in his hand. One after another, strange symbols appeared around Liaoyu's body. They formed a strange pattern. Long Haochen didn't stop accumulating power. After his spiritual power turned into liquid form, the speed at which he accumulated power decreased, but the effect of the liquid spiritual power was obviously increased. At this moment, his body was turning golden. The Holy Spirit armor had been completely dyed golden. An incomparable divine aura continued to rise from his body, and the oppressive force that erupted from his body grew stronger and stronger. After all, the snow shadow leopard's physical strength was limited. After it ran around the night training field at its highest speed for 3 rounds, its explosive power gradually decreased, and its speed also slowed down. At this moment, Liaoyu's incantation was finally completed. One could clearly see that there were a total of 36 strange symbols surrounding his body. These symbols were all pink, like a layer of pink gauze enveloping him. A terrifying barbaric aura erupted the moment these strange symbols were completed. The terrifying pressure caused the protective barrier around the entire training ground to tremble. On the rostrum, all the experts looked at each other in dismay. Sacred Magus Lin Chun said in astonishment, "Are the youngsters nowadays so powerful? What is this? Barbaric magical beast summoning?" All the so-called barbaric magical beasts were mutated species passed down from ancient times and were much stronger than ordinary magical beasts. The weakest barbaric magical beast was at least of the 7th rank. They would usually only exist in some special places and deep in the mountains and swamps. The 36 pink symbols rose up and spread outwards, turning into a huge pink halo that slowly disappeared into the air. However, as they disappeared, a steaming red halo appeared above Liao Yu's head. At this moment, Hao Yue suddenly moved. In the previous exchanges, the speed it had displayed was very ordinary, only that of an ordinary 6th rank magical beast. However, at this moment, an intense green light appeared on its body, causing its huge body to float slightly. At the same time, an intense green light instantly burst forth from its back, propelling its huge body at an astonishing speed towards Liao Yu as it transformed into a beam of green light. Naturally, it wasn't just Greenie who moved. An astonishing red light soared into the sky, turning into a scarlet halo in the air. The red light rebounded and descended from the sky, landing on Long Haochen's body, which had already turned completely golden. This was the support version of Dazzling Fire Dance, a peak level 5 fire support spell. Boom! Intense golden red flames suddenly erupted. Sitting upright on Hao Yue's back, Long Haochen was as dazzling as a god of war. Light's ability wasn't as dazzling as greenies and fireballs, but from its head, 3 golden halos erupted in succession. Trusty Halo, Radiant Halo, Faith Halo. Among them, even Long Haochen didn't know the Radiant Halo. This halo could instantly increase the attack power of all light attribute skills by 20% and produce a compression effect on the light element. Liao Yu wasn't the only one chanting the incantation. Hao Yue and the other 2 had long since prepared their incantations, waiting for this moment to erupt. Light, Fireball, and Greenie actually erupted with 6 skills in an instant for support and 2 speed. Almost in an instant, Long Haochen's battle prowess was raised to its peak. Liao Yu's expression changed somewhat. This powerful summon of his, relying on a medium to transcend ranks, could only launch one attack, but he had absolute confidence in its power to defeat Long Haochen. However, at the same time that this summoning spell was completed, the speed of the Snow Shadow Leopard was greatly reduced due to the influence of the savage pressure. In addition, the Snow Shadow Leopard's physical strength had already been greatly depleted, and its speed was no longer faster than Hao Yue's. More importantly, this summoning spell required 3 breaths of time to be released. And it was also at this moment that Hao Yue launched the Wind Magic Levitation and Wind Pillar, propelling its body forward at such a rapid speed. The timing of Hao Yue's attack was not Long Haochen's instruction, but Hao Yue's own timing. Even Long Haochen didn't know how it could make such a sharp judgment. Even with Long Haochen's perception, he could only make a clear judgment in the next moment. In just 2 breaths of time, Hao Yue had already carried Long Haochen across 100 meters. At this moment, all Liao Yu could do was to urge the Snow Shadow Leopard to run as fast as possible, to fight for this last bit of time for himself. In that instant, white light gushed out from Long Haochen's chest. One could faintly see a small white tripod furnace hovering in front of his chest, and the gentle white light quietly fell on the Snow Shadow Leopard's body. This caused the sprinting Snow Shadow Leopard to subconsciously turn its head to look at Long Haochen. Immediately after, a strong suction suddenly pulled it out horizontally, its body unsteady, and the Snow Shadow Leopard almost fell to the ground. Gold, brilliant gold, like a shocking long rainbow on the Holy Spirit sword, the dazzling light and fire merged into the most dazzling light blade. A huge golden sword of up to 3 meters in length appeared in the sky, with twisted light patterns, with the unique smell of sunlight and the freshness of the air after being burned by fire, and with a dazzling tail flame, it broke through the sky. Light-severing sword, a materialized light-severing sword. With the power of the accumulated power and the amplification of Hao Yue, Long Haochen launched the most powerful attack of his life. This attack, even a powerhouse of the 6th rank, could not withstand its sharpness. This attack seemed to have condensed all of Long Haochen's spiritual power. This was an explosion of power after compression. That golden light sword, in almost an instant, had already broken through the pink clouds. The constantly fluctuating clouds suddenly condensed, and then thousands of golden lights exploded from within. Vaguely, Long Haochen heard a chirp. Although it was only a slight sound, in that instant, whether it was him or Hao Yue, they both felt as if they had been struck by lightning. A vast pressure that was accompanied by a strong sense of anger flashed by. What exactly did he summon? This question suddenly appeared in Long Haochen's mind. Although he had disrupted the other party's summoning, at this moment, his heart was not at ease. Vaguely, Long Haochen felt that he had been too careless. Although this battle method was simple and direct, he had still underestimated his opponent. If he had really completed the summoning magic just now, perhaps he would have already lost. Liao Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but his pale face at this moment betrayed his current state. Long Haochen's accumulated power was at full force. How could he not have completed this summoning magic with all his might? Without the overdraft of the consumption, without the medium in front of his chest, he simply could not have completed this magic. Moreover, the severity of his overdraft was equivalent to the sacrifice that Long Haochen had used before. With the quality of his body and his recovery ability, it would be impossible for him to recover without 10 days. In other words, even if he won this battle against Long Haochen, it would be very difficult for him to participate in the next round. The reason why Liao Yu made this choice was because of his keen senses. What Long Haochen did not know was that the opponent in front of him was similar to him in some aspects, and also had a special innate spiritual energy. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through to the 5th rank at the age of 20, the summoning profession, which was the most difficult to cultivate in the 6th Great Temple. When Long Haochen summoned Hao Yue, Liao Yu acutely felt the gap between him and his opponent. He knew that he could not break through Long Haochen's accumulated power, and the magical beast that he could summon was also not stronger than Hao Yue. Therefore, he could only take a risk and hope that he could enter the top 4. Unfortunately, he still lost in the end. Although he was very unwilling to lose, the outcome was already decided. What else could he do? Light illuminated heaven and earth, spiritual energy feedback. With the support of Little Light, Long Haochen's almost exhausted spiritual energy slowly recovered. But Hao Yue had already rushed in front of his opponent. The Snow Shadow Leopard still wanted to resist, but it was directly suppressed by Little Fire's roaring flames and could not move, and Little Green unceremoniously bit its neck. Looking at Long Haochen, Liao Yu, who was on the verge of collapse, sighed. "I lost." Long Haochen asked, "I'm very curious. What magical beast did you want to summon just now? Its power was actually so strong." Liao Yu did not hide anything. Although he was unwilling to lose, he also quite admired Long Haochen's strength. That last sword was not just a grasp of the timing. If it did not have enough power, it would be impossible to break the summoning cloud. It's the savage vermilion bird, a variant of the level 10 mythological beast phoenix. Although I can only summon it to launch one attack, the power of this attack is comparable to that of a level 8 magical beast. That is equivalent to the attack of a level 7 professional. If the summoning really succeeded, I'm afraid the outcome will be reversed. Long Haochen's heart shook, thinking to himself, to be able to reach this step in the selection, there really is no one easy to deal with. If he really let it complete the summoning, not only would he lose, he would probably be seriously injured. How could the attack of a level 8 magical beast be so easy to resist? Long Haochen wins. While they were talking, the Snow Shadow Leopard had already fallen to the ground, its head bitten off by Little Green. What chance did a level 4 magical beast have against a level 6 magical beast? Long Haochen jumped down, supporting Liao Yu, who was already somewhat unable to support his body. It seems that my choice of tactics is problematic. I shouldn't have used stored power to deal with you. Liao Yu calmly said, I didn't expect you to have a Saint's spiritual stove. And if I didn't guess wrong, your Saint's spiritual stove should have already evolved once. If possible, I sincerely hope to be in the same group as you in the Monster Hunters the day after tomorrow. Long Haochin chuckled and said, I also hope so. There was no doubt that Liao Yu was the #1 person in the Soul Temple of the Monster Hunter selection. If he could be in the same group as him, it would naturally be a great thing. Thinking of this, Long Haochin couldn't help but think of Chuning, who questioned him this morning. Compared to that unreliable summoning girl, Liao Yu was obviously much more outstanding. The staff quickly entered and helped Liao Yu out. Naturally, there were people from the Temple of the Priests who would treat him. After sending Hao Yue back, Long Haochin strode towards the rest area. He clenched his fists tightly. He had entered the top 4, only one step away from the top 3. He was only 2 matches away from first place. The second match was between the Assassin Temple and the Warrior Temple, the 2 lucky participants who drew lots. However, drawing lots didn't mean that their matches were easy. On the contrary, this was the most brutal match in the elimination round so far. In terms of cultivation, the one from the Warrior Temple was slightly stronger, having already broken through to the 5th level. On the other hand, the one from the Assassin Temple was at the peak of the 4th level. There was a qualitative difference between the two. However, this assassin from the Assassin Temple who was able to enter the top 8 was also quite tyrannical in strength. Moreover, he possessed 3 secret skills. Relying on the protection of the huge pillars that rose up in the middle of the field, he launched an extremely arduous battle. The entire battle lasted for nearly half an hour. In the end, the assassin relied on his amazing willpower and used himself as bait. When his opponent's heavy sword slashed into his shoulder bone, he instantly counterattacked and pierced through the armor at his opponent's throat. One slash to the throat. Of course, he didn't really kill his opponent, but at the cost of serious injuries, he finally won the battle. If one were to sum up the secret of his victory, then it would be patience. From the beginning to the end, he was suppressed, but in the end, he won with a counterattack. As the weak, he defeated a 5th-level opponent and brazenly advanced into the top 4. This match made Sui Feng, who was on the rostrum, nod continuously. He decided to properly groom this assassin after this qualifier. The third match was the internal battle of the Knights Templars. Before Yang Wenjiao stood up and walked towards the training field, he intentionally looked at Long Haochin. The current him looked very calm, and his heart was at peace. Before Long Haochin appeared, he had always been known as the most talented among the younger generation of the Knights Templars. This talent was not only displayed in terms of strength, but also in his heart. The strength of Long Haochin and Kai had also completely stimulated Yang Wenjiao's fighting spirit. No matter who his opponent in the next round of the top 4 was, he would definitely fight with all his might. Yang Wenjiao's opponent was a very low-profile knight. His appearance was ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. However, he was unusually calm. He looked to be slightly older than Yang Wenjiao. Knights Templars Yang Wenjiao versus Knights Templars Duan. Both sides get ready. The match begins. In the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars, Long Haochin was defeated by Yang Wenjiao, while Yang Wenjiao was heavily injured by Kai and was unable to continue. This Duan was the first place of the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars. His strength was naturally extraordinary. Following the referee's signal, both of them did not hesitate to summon their mounts. Both of them were 5th level. Other than their own strength, it was also a competition of the strength of their mounts. Just like Long Haochin went all out, Yang Wenjiao did not hold anything back. Today, Yang Wenjiao was also wearing the same silver-white armor, but it was slightly different from Long Haochin's. In his hands was still the same pair of golden greatswords. The difference was that Duan Yi's armor was black, and so were his shield and greatsword. This was very rare among the knights. Moreover, Duan Yi's weapons and equipment were much thicker than normal equipment. At this time, Long Haochin had already returned to sit next to Kerr, concentrating on the battle in front of him. He had never seen Yang Wenjiao's mount before, so he could observe it through this battle. Perhaps it was because Yang Wenjiao had defeated him before, so in his heart, he hoped that Yang Wenjiao could defeat his opponent. The golden great swords in his hands drew a strange light in front of him, and a golden hexagram bloomed in front of Yang Wenjiao. Nay, accompanied by a long neigh, a unicorn appeared in front of everyone amidst the cries of surprise in the resting area. Its body was snow white, and the mane on its neck was golden. A spiral golden horn stood proudly on its head. It had a pair of huge wings, and the outermost ring of feathers on its pure white wings was golden. Circles of golden light were emitted from its body. It was actually a starlight unicorn. Long Haochen had seen the beauty of this kind of unicorn with his own eyes, and had even been rejected by the king of starlight unicorns. This so-called noblest unicorn had left a deep impression on him. He really didn't expect Yang Wenjiao's mount to be a starlight unicorn. The starlight unicorn before him was 3 meters long and 8 feet tall. A pair of pure white wings slowly spread open on its back. Although it was not yet an adult, it was still very handsome. One had to know that the starlight unicorn was known as the most ideal mount for a knight. Although an adult starlight unicorn was a level 8 magical beast, because of its high compatibility with a knight, even some level 9 magical beast mounts might not be able to compare to it. This also meant that Yang Wenjiao was a sky knight. Rumble. Just as Long Haochen was admiring the starlight unicorn, on the other side, Duan Yi had also finished summoning his mount. Duan Yi's mount was far from being as beautiful and dazzling as the starlight unicorn, but it was much more terrifying. Its huge body was more than 6 meters tall, and its body was more than 3 meters long. Its 4 thick limbs were like 4 giant pillars. Its long red fur hung down, and 2 huge fangs protruded from its mouth. The most peculiar thing was that there was a golden red horn on its head. This was a golden horned mammoth, a dual elemental pinnacle level 8 magical beast of light and fire. Oh no, this golden horned mammoth was also underage. An adult golden horned mammoth would probably be more than twice its size. But even so, this terrifying magical beast strength was probably at the pinnacle of level 6 or level 7. In terms of aura, it was even more imposing than the starlight unicorn. In yesterday's elimination round, whether it was Long Haochen, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan, none of them had released their mounts. Today, when they released their mounts for the competition, the rostrum was completely silent. Even though the other 5 temples were somewhat unwilling to admit it, they all understood. Knights Templars truly deserved to be ranked first. The younger generation of knight was not just powerful alone. Whether it was Long Haochen, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan Yi, they could all be said to be genius knight. Even Han Yu, who was eliminated by Long Haochen in the preliminary round due to his arrogance, was also a rank 5 knight. There was even another rank 5 knight who was eliminated in yesterday's competition. Even Lin Xin, a female knight with a rose unicorn, entered the top 16 of this year's competition. If it wasn't for the bad luck of the draw, perhaps tomorrow's semifinals would be a one-man show for Knights Templars. Yang Wenjiao stepped forward and got on the starlight unicorn. On the other side, the golden horn mammoth was a little too tall. It was not practical to jump on it. However, Duan, he had his ways. The golden horn mammoth lifted one of its front hooves. After Duan Yi leaped up, he stepped on the front hooves first and used the momentum to jump again. He successfully rode on the golden horn mammoth's thick neck. The starlight unicorn ran a few steps, spread its wings, and glided into the air. A faint golden halo spread from under its feet. It was noble, elegant, dazzling, and majestic. Seeing the starlight unicorn in the air, Long Haochen could only hear praises coming from behind him. Yang Wenjiao, who was riding on the starlight unicorn, was filled with the temperament of a Prince Charming. However, not everyone was praising him. There was at least one exception. Chening, sat beside Wang Yuanyuan. Looking at Yang Wenjiao in the air, she curled her lips and said, "Show off." Wang Yuanyuan looked at her doubtfully and said, "Inger, do you know him?" Chening, beautiful face revealed a bit of disgust. She turned her head away and said, "No." In the air, Yang Wenjiao slowly raised his 2 swords on both sides of his body. A gentle golden light spread out and merged with the golden light emitted by the unicorn in a short time, becoming the same color. At this moment, The aura emitted by Yang Wenjiao was not only full of light attribute light, but also a strong holy aura. The golden halo under the unicorn's feet also turned into a hexagram. Spreading its wings, the starlight unicorn's crystal-clear eyes did not have the slightest hostility. It glided down and headed straight for the golden horn mammoth's head. Boom! On the golden horn mammoth's side, a thick golden-red flame instantly rose. At first glance, it looked like a huge golden-red fireball. Duan Yi slowly raised the enlarged heavy sword in his hand. The golden-red flame instantly rose, and the flame emitted from the tip of the sword was more than 3 meters long. Seeing that the starlight unicorn was approaching, about 15 meters away from the golden horn mammoth, Yang Wenjiao launched his first attack. Light severing sword cross slash. The power of the light severing sword burst out from the pair of golden great swords at the same time. The cross slash appeared out of nowhere and went straight for Duan Yi on the golden horn mammoth's neck. Just as the radiant blade was about to be unleashed, 2 specks of golden light floated out from the starlight unicorn's horn and fused with the radiant blade. Suddenly, the radiant blade underwent a qualitative change. The 2 blades of light glittered with resplendent starlight, and the dense holy aura and pressure it exuded completely transformed the originally weak attack. Duan Yi's expression turned serious. He slashed out with a heavy sword in his hand, and the golden-red flame turned into a huge flaming sword, colliding with the cross slash. Suddenly, countless dazzling lights exploded in the air and scattered in all directions. The starlight unicorn streaked across the sky again. At this time, he could not help but think of how great it would be if he could Long Haochen's ready skill. He would be able to fully unleash the Sky Knight's advantage. Yang Wenjiao secretly made up his mind. After the competition ended, he would definitely use the reward to learn this skill. Was accumulating power really that useless? Long Haochen had already won several matches with this skill. Moreover, the greatest advantage of Ready was that it could help the knight burst out with the power of a higher rank attack. How could Long Haochen's previous slash in the competition be as simple as a rank 5 attack? It had at least reached the attack power of a rank 6 Radiance Knight. One in the air, one on the ground, the 2 sides crossed each other. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell who had the upper hand in the earlier collision. On the starlight unicorn's body, the golden light was clear and there were no changes. Although Duan Yi had blocked the cross slash, the golden red flames rising from the golden horned mammoth's body clearly drifted backward as if it had been blown away by a gale. The starlight unicorn circled in the air, and Yang Wenjiao's dual swords were already shining in the air. A holy white light rose, and it was the power of condensing the holy sword. Moreover, both swords were condensing the holy sword at the same time. At this time, the starlight unicorn's power was even more apparent. Halos in the shape of a hexagram rose from its body, and Yang Wenjiao's speed of condensing the holy sword was at least twice as fast. When the starlight unicorn launched another gliding charge, his dual swords were already emitting a glaring white sword glow. Duan Yi's eyes flickered, but surprisingly, he did not use any skills when he saw Yang Wenjiao gliding down. "I admit defeat." A deep voice echoed throughout the arena under the stimulation of spiritual power. Yang Wenjiao was stunned and hurriedly raised the holy sword that he was about to slash. The starlight unicorn glided over the golden horn mammoth's head and circled in the air before arriving in front of Duan Yi again. "Brother Duan, you admit defeat?" Yang Wenjiao looked at him puzzled. Both sides had only carried out probing attacks. It could be said that the match had not really begun. Duan Yi's eyes seemed to be struggling, but he still nodded at Yang Wenjiao. "In terms of overall strength, I'm confident that I'm not weaker than you. But I also know that with the starlight unicorn and the ability to soar in the air, you're already in an invincible position. Perhaps if I go all out, you'll have to pay a huge price if you want to defeat me. However, it's too difficult for me to win this match. Our cultivations are about the same, but the aerial superiority of the Punishment Knight and the Starlight Unicorn makes me unable to see any hope of victory. If you came from another temple, I'd definitely fight with all my might. But we're both knight. At this point, he paused for a moment before shouting in a deep voice, "For the glory of the night." As he spoke, Duan raised the shield in his left hand to protect the left side of his body, and the heavy sword in his right hand was placed in front of the shield. Then he pressed it against his left chest and performed a standard guardian knight salute. This phrase, "for the glory of the night," was enough to tell Yang Wenjiao everything. Yang Wenjiao's expression instantly became solemn, and his eyes revealed deep respect. He held both swords in front of his chest and waved them in a crisscross manner. Then he flipped his wrist and held the hilt of his right sword against his left chest, performing a punishment knight salute. In a loud voice, he said, "For the glory of the night." Yang Wenjiao's admiration for Duan Yi was sincere. There was no doubt that Duan Yi's surrender did not mean that he did not have the strength to fight. It was just that he felt that his chances of winning were small, so he gave the chance to advance to Yang Wenjiao, who was slightly stronger than him, instead of going all out. There were still matches after this. If they both suffered losses, it would mean that Knights Templars would lose a competitive spot in the top 4. After a probing attack, Duan Yi chose to directly surrender, which was to preserve Yang Wenjiao's competitive strength. Coupled with Long Haochen, who had already advanced, even if the two of them were drawn into the same group in the top 4, Knights Templars would still occupy 2 of the top 3 places as long as there were no accidents. The assassin who barely made it into the top 4 in the previous match would definitely be at the bottom. Yang Wenjiao asked himself, if he was in such a situation, it would be difficult for him to be as magnanimous and decisive as Duan Yi. The phrase that they each shouted, "for the glory of the night," had already explained why this match ended so quickly. Yang Wenjiao deliberately shouted loudly to tell everyone that Duan Yi was not worse than him. On the rostrum, Han Q nodded slightly, and his face showed a hint of gratification. The leaders of the other major temple were silent. In their eyes, there was undisguised envy. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, one was the sky and the other the earth. The brilliance of these two young knights made everyone seem to see their future. In addition, there was the younger Long Haochen. These 3 people would definitely become the mainstay of the Knights Templars in the future. At least in their generation, the position of the Knights Templars as the head of the 6th major temple was still unshakable. After retrieving their mounts and weapons, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi looked at each other and returned to the resting area with mutual appreciation. "Kai, be careful," Long Haochen reminded her in a low voice. Kai nodded slightly. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and she slowly walked into the arena with the sound of do-do-do. The last match of the quarterfinals, Kai against Huang Yi. Huang Yi slowly walked into the arena with a bitter face. Mages and priests were most afraid of assassins, not to mention that he was about to face such a powerful existence. No one had seen Kai's bottom line. In other words, she had never shown her full strength. However, Huang Yi naturally would not admit defeat like Duan Yi. He had to give it a try. Assassin Temple's Kai against Magic Temple's Huang Yi. Due to the professions of both sides, the distance between them will be 40 meters. Get ready. Assassins against mages naturally would not have the advantage of raising the giant pillar. The distance between the two sides slowly increased. Huang Yi nervously gripped his short magic cane and tried to make his breathing more even. He was already prepared to chant at any time. Match start. The 4 words that the referee shouted were like a switch on Huang Yi. Under the great pressure that Kai brought him, he completely unleashed his full potential. Chanting and summoning the earth elemental sprite were done in one go. They started by chanting in tandem. The rapid chanting continuously sounded from his and the earth elemental sprite's mouths. The intensity of the chanting was almost catching up to that of the beast tamer. Kai also moved. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and her body floated up like a cloud, rushing straight towards Huang Yi's direction. Every 30 feet, the green bamboo cane would touch the ground again, and her speed would increase sharply. Yellow light shot into the sky, and then a huge rock fell from the sky. What surprised the spectators was that this rockfall technique wasn't aimed at Kai, but rather at the ground to the side. Dong! A loud sound came from the ground. Huang Yi and his earth elemental sprite were still chanting, but they did not make any sound. Silent chanting? This was a high-level technique. For mages, it was no longer as simple as a secret technique. Obviously, this was Huang Yi's final trump card. As he switched to a soundless chant, he quietly moved to the side. Too sinister. This guy was taking advantage of Kai Er's weakness of being blind. Long Haochen, who was in the resting area, suddenly became angry. As expected, after the giant rock hit the ground, there was a thud. Kai Er's forward speed suddenly slowed, as if she was at a loss. Then, she turned and rushed towards the direction of the giant rock. Huang Yi's face showed a trace of helplessness. He had seen Kai Er's speed just now. She only needed 3 breaths to rush in front of him. In this situation, he had no other choice. If he let Kai rush over, he would not have a chance at all. He apologized in his heart and continued chanting with his earth elemental sprite. Just like when he defeated Wang Yuan. Only by using the earth wave spell could he be invincible. Who did not want to be in the top 3? If he could win this match, there was hope for him to be in the top 3. Huang Yu was still confident that he could defeat the assassin who had won but was heavily injured. Seeing Kai rushing towards the direction of the boulder, he cautiously didn't dare to make any sound. Yellow halos began to condense on his magic staff, and in at most 10 breaths of time, the earth wave spell would be completed.